Consequence Podcast Network.
My friendship to all of you precludes my involvement with any one of you. But if you wanna make love, then I do too, and I'll be right there behind you. All in the name of oh, all in the name of oh, all in the name of oh.
Greetings, constant listeners, and welcome once again to the Losers Club, a Stephen King podcast from Consequence of Sound. I am one of your hosts, Justin Gerber, senior writer at Consequence of Sound, asking, hey, everybody, you want to see a dead body?
Yeah.
Sincerely.
Not particularly.
Well, sorry, Allison, because we're back in Castle Rock for The Body, the third novella, some might even say the penultimate novella in different seasons. Once we wrap that discussion, we're going to also talk about Rob Reiner's famous film adaptation. That was, of course, retitled Stand By Me, a beloved piece of work in its own right. But first, let's let the other losers introduce themselves, reveal the edition from which they read, and talk about when they first encountered this material, whether it was the novella or the film. Let's start off right in front of me. She's back for the first time, I think, since The Gunslinger.
Yeah, that sounds right.
That's right. And who are you?
I have no idea. Yeah, well, it's
Jim
a coming
Carrey
of
over
age
here.
story, right? I'll probably learn something about myself by the end. I'm Allison Shoemaker. I'm a senior writer at Consequence of Sound, and I read from the Kindle edition because I think my second paperback copy of Different Seasons also got lent out and never came back. It's one of those. But I saw the film first, and then started reading basically the second it was over. And have watched and read many times since then.
We've talked about this, but I'm a Kindle junkie myself now.
Mm-hmm.
But I only use Overdrive. I still just check out books on my Kindle, but it's very rare that you can find a King book that you can check out onto your Kindle. Sometimes you can just check it out and read it on your phone or desktop. It's very frustrating when I'm trying to take notes. But what can you do? What can you do? Who's that to your left, Allison?
I have no idea.
Oh, wait.
This is Teddy Champ over here. No. This is Michael Rothman, editor-in-chief of Consequence of Sound. And I read from an actual first edition paperback of Different Seasons that I have. It's a Signet classic. And it is absolutely destroyed because I carried it around into 3 different states. I carried it to Los Angeles when I was reading Shawshank, and I was crying like a baby on the plane. And then I took it down to Miami for my brother's wedding, and that's when I was reading The Body. Or no, Apt Pupil, actually. A real fun story to be reading when your brother is getting married. And I've, bunny-eared all the pages, and I am you can see it. It's all ripped up now. Destroyed. This is a pristine first edition copy when I had it, and it's awful. I can't believe I did this.
That looks like my edition of Gordon LeChance's Stud City.
Ooh, love
Mac,
Stud City.
What about you? Oh, who are you? I'm sorry.
My
Mac.
name's Mac, and I'm a constant contributor to this podcast and Consequence of Sound.
And you only go by the name Mac. You don't have a last name.
Well, actually, it's Mackenzie Goocher Gerber.
Ooh, Goocher.
This is the first time I have read The Body. I saw them film when I was a kid, and I only saw it once, I think.
Wow.
But it was, I feel like you only really needed to see it
Wait,
once
you only
to
saw the
be
movie
impacted
once?
by it when I was a kid, and then I saw it yesterday again.
Wow.
Yeah.
This is a
it wasn't
movie
a film that we just had. It wasn't always on TV. If it was on TV, I might have caught parts of it. But watching it straight through, I think I only saw it once as a child.
I don't think a year goes by where I don't watch it at least once or twice. It's just, it's personally one of my favorite movies.
So you've
of all
seen this
time.
movie
Top
60
10 for me.
times.
I've seen this movie so many times.
Well, it's so short. We'll talk about that
It's
later.
very
It's
short.
an easy watch.
Yeah.
This had to have been a TBS staple.
Oh.
This had to have been on TBS all the time.
I
growing
feel like
up.
it was on maybe USA a bunch.
Yeah.
And,
I lived for that stuff. So
I agreed.
I also continued my pocketbooks edition
Oh.
of Different Seasons.
it's a great.
with the
I
great
actually,
cover.
I like the
of
cover
the
of that.
railroad tracks.
Yeah.
Over the water.
It's better than that. Once again, that roadwork cover where you see the guy with the gun in the middle of the road. Well, this scene doesn't happen. I would like to read that book, by the way, whatever the hell that is. My edition, once again, is the famous, some might say infamous, paperback edition that sponsored by the Shawshank Redemption. No, it's just the movie poster from Shawshank Redemption. It says from the work, different seasons.
Well, actually, I recall that, because, Rob Reiner created Castle Rock after Stand By Me. I believe that, didn't Frank Darabont create Shawshank Incorporated after he did the movie?
He did. It was like the TED Corporation and then the Shawshank Incorporated. Great bits all day here at the Losers Club, and we're going to keep going here. Before we get into the hook structure format and the synopsis of the book, there's a little bit of history I'd like to go over. As we discussed in the Apt Pupil episode, 3 of the novellas in different seasons were written in between drafts 1 and 2 of various King novels in the 70s. So if you thought he was prolific in the 70s, get ready. Because while he was writing The Shining, he wrote Apt Pupil. During The Stand, he wrote Shawshank. But before all these, while he was writing Salem's Lot, he wrote The Body. And much of The Body is actually based on a real event from King's childhood. One day, a neighborhood friend came by and asked him the question, do you want to see a dead body? And it turned out the police were dragging a victim of a drowning incident. And they saw this body that before had been covered, and the event truly scarred the King for life. The novella itself is dedicated to George MacLeod, and there's a bit of a dark cloud over this story. MacLeod was an old college friend of King's who later claimed that King stole the story from him.
Whoa, that's weird.
He said, I guess when they were friends back in the college days, that he had started writing this story about a group of friends going to go see a dead dog.
Interesting.
And he claims the major events of the story are his, but he never finished writing it. And then years and years later, the movie Stand By Me came out in the mid-'80s, years later. And MacLeod asked King for a cut of the money. King refused. MacLeod sued him, and obviously they're not friends anymore. And he said that, for better or worse, King is a sponge. He soaks up so much information that you can tell by his writing. His 1,000-page books, it makes sense. But he said, for better or worse, he's like a sponge. So anybody out there with writing anything with King around, be careful. I'm kidding. I don't know what the whole story is behind this. Who knows if he's making this up or not? But
I like the idea or the accusation that King needs to borrow ideas at this point in his career. He's clearly, whatever.
But
I'm biased.
Well, yeah, of course. But I mean, the prose itself is definitely his. So I'll just leave it at that.
It's not like. Here's another thing with it. It's not like this, a killer clown that is able to transform and get kids or whatever. That's a concept that's crazy and different or whatever. This is a bunch of kids that are going out to look for a dead body. There's nothing really big about that. It's the most simple, natural story that you could possibly put down for a coming of age thing. It's okay, yeah, that's easy.
We'll talk about the structure, MacGuffin. But it's also written in the first person, and it's basically, I feel like it's just a fictionalized version of King. There's so much that gets discussed, and that's absolutely the life that Stephen King has lived. So, you can only take so much. Whether or not that's 100% true to me, it still reads like a Stephen King book to me. So that's all I'll say about that. Let's go into the hook of this book.
Ah, yes. Don't you see? Don't you see how clear it all is? Not only can you see the future, I can change it. You can change it, exactly.
And once again, like the other stories in different seasons, is easy. It's the fall from innocence, and that's literally what it says at the beginning of this. It's the fall from innocence. It's written in first person, like I said, from the point of view of a grown-up Gordy LaChance, played by Richard Dreyfuss. No, the book is just
in the book. Yeah.
In the book, it says specifically in italics, "Read like Richard Dreyfuss."
I've never had kids.
Oh my God! Did you? Intercut,
Damn it, Martin!
And it's intercut with. Great. Damn it, Teddy. Intercut with published tales from Gordy that he writes over the years, including Stud City and the Lardass story as well. Who here wants to talk about that theme of the fall from innocence? Because there's definitely a lot of that going on throughout this entire book, whether it's being realized when he's a child or being recollected as an adult. Well, listen, we've had some really long episodes, and I feel like finally we're gonna even things out here. A 10-minute episode. No, but whoever wants to talk about the fall from innocence, that's how it's portrayed in the book, feel free to jump in.
Well, I just feel like there's a real fall from innocence in this book. No, I think that especially this story and just following these 4 kids in a time where you start budgeting your Christmas list because your parents are actually the one, all that stuff. Everything starts to kind of fall away. The curtain is pulled back, and it's just eye opening to see these kids realize just kind of like how things are going to turn out. And I know it's written from Gordy in the future, but there are a lot of moments where they say, or Chris has some crazy insights into like the reality of the world. And just to see these kids grappling with that, or having to grapple with that as kids, kind of is upsetting, because I know that just growing up, there's times I can definitely recall where I realized, oh, that's how the real world works, or oh, am more mature than that adult who's 40 years older than me, like in certain terms. And it's just, it's a little sad to see it written down, because it's true. I mean, I would say when you grow up, you're, just kind of aware of how shitty the world is.
Well, it's kind of like that. Everyone always talks about how kids never really understand the concept of life and death, because you just think you're going to be young and live on forever, and you don't really understand the ramifications and consequences of what the world really has for you and has in store for you. And I feel like obviously Ray Brower, the body itself, represents this sort of jarring from reality, but at the same time, this is all written in hindsight, and hindsight's 20/20, and the narrator is able to kind of see it not just from rose tinted lenses, but also from a position where he is able to assess like the realities of every one of his friends, himself, even like his enemies at that point, because he even sympathizes in some respects with the Ace situation and all that stuff, because he at that point he's much older, he's been through life, he understands this. So I think that sort of hindsight is really important here, because if it was written not from the perspective of this kid,
it'd be like Stud City.
Yeah, exactly. And there wouldn't be some sort of like, I think that hindsight's really important. And it's interesting because I feel like growing up, there's always at least it's not that, for me at least, there wasn't just one incident. There was like multiple incidents that make you realize the realities of life. And I think with this, when it's a short story, or not a short story, but a novella, you need to have some sort of catalyst. And obviously it's the body in here in this, but at the same time, I think it's everyone else's respective situations in life. Like, I mean, even when you see Chris and he's hitchhiking and just to meet up with Gordy, or and Teddy's whole situation with the ears, and with even Vern's situation at home, and with this his abusive brother almost, and how he's kind of terrified of him. I mean, they all have their own little like evils in their lives, and the one thing I kept wondering while reading it is, do the kids realize that at that moment, or is it something that Gordy, as an older an adult, is something that he realizes a little bit more? Because there's there's that hindsight that's there. So I don't know. That's something that's interesting, because clearly when they get to the body, the kids themselves do change. Like, their perspectives on life do change. Like, they seem to be a little bit more accepting of certain situations. The bond between them obviously grows stronger, even though they do actually end up growing apart. And then there's like sobering realizations that Gordy has also. But again, I wonder how much is that tied to older Gordy looking back? I don't know,
I would agree.
I think that's pretty spot on. One of my favorite things about the story is the sense that the younger Gordy can tell when something is different, but can't articulate how.
Yeah.
And the adult Gordy can articulate how, but recognizes that some things just sort of lose their magic and power when you try to name them. And I think that's particularly evident every time they even come close to trying to address exactly why it is that Gordy and Chris are so close, which is incredibly complex. And I don't think we're going to be able to tap that, right? Some people just, you meet someone and that person is a fixture in your life in some way. And even if you drift apart, and even if you're no longer close, there's still some sort of hook. Like, some people just get into your system and then they're just there. And I think that is something that is addressed both directly and indirectly, that the idea that people can stay children but stop being kids, that's something, and that everyone reacts to that differently. Like, of these 4 children, Chris is not a kid, and even though he really wants to be, and the other 3 all sort of have different phases where they're one or the other, or sort of straddling the border in some way, but Chris has such adult thoughts because he's had to, and it's just like a really insightful look at what it is to be a child, but not a child anymore, because you don't have the luxury of sort of living in this world where the stakes are so low. And being confronted with this body sort of confronts them directly with the idea that there isn't any such thing as safety, and that once you're in this bubble, even if you're in this bubble, it's just an illusion, and life can end at any moment, and horrors can be visited on you, and they take many forms. And that childhood isn't actually safe; it just feels safe.
And I like the fact also that the body is a kid.
Yeah,
because it could have very easily been some vagrant that they discovered, but the fact that it's a kid, and you realize, oh, even though I'm 10 or 12. I forgot how old they are. 12 or 13 in this.
They're 12, yeah.
And they realize, oh, I probably have another 70, 80 years left. No, it could all end in an instant.
The fact that it's a kid is paramount to the story.
Yeah.
Because that's really Gordy's realizations. I think all the kids actually realize that, with the exception of Ace and his asshole friends. But I think the fact
Love
that,
Ace.
When they're watching him, it's, there's that haunting image of the fact that he imagines like hailstones, like, piling onto the eyes because the eyes won't close because it's dead. And I think that's something that he alludes to early on in the book too, because he, again, it's written from,
I think it's on the first page.
Yeah. And he says he's haunted by that image because that's what they do actually see. And the fact that it is a kid, some might argue that's a little on the nose in terms of like having the kids accept death, but
I don't know. I think that the power of the book would be diminished if it was an adult. If it was,
I agree.
I mean, I think
if it was like the wino that the kid.
If it was one of the stew bums from that stew bum, that's a whole different story.
And that doesn't mean that an experience like that couldn't still be scarring.
Of course,
but I mean, I think the most important lines in the book all have to do with he's one of us, or the 5 of us. The 5 of us hits me like a freight train every time I get there. And it's because he's just like them. It could have been any of them, and it's not even so much about the randomness of life as about the realization that everything is fragile, and that any sense of safety is an illusion, especially when there are such real threats lurking just outside the frame all the time.
Whether it's bullies like Ace and his gang, or trains coming when you're trying to pick berries or whatever.
Mean
Dogs.
shop owners,
Oh,
neglectful
God.
parents.
Yeah, it goes on and on. And the thing, I think The Fall from Innocence, if anything, really reflects the Gordy character, because I think all 3 of you really hit upon this, that Teddy and Vern have had really tough lives growing up. Teddy obviously was physically abused by his father. We know Vern's home life isn't necessarily a great one. Chris' family, also awful. But it wasn't until Denny, Gordy's brother, passes away where I think his Fall from Innocence truly begins with that death. I guess it's 4 or 5 months earlier. I don't know. It's a complex book. It's a complex novella. And this is another case of, I'm happy this was a novella, because I don't know if you could have necessarily sustained the poignancy, the nostalgia for like 600 pages. But I think it works great in 120 plus pages, or whatever edition you read from. I'm sure we all have varying page counts, but it's just a perfect length. And the movie is also perfect length. We'll talk about that later on.
Yeah, I mean, to go back to like what the actual hook is, and the fact that it's a kid, and I mean, there's that whole, it's one of the best moments in the movie. They definitely shorten it, but I mean, it's that whole discussion of when he's just observing him for the first time, really observing him, not just like seeing his kids in the trees and the fact that there's a body down there, but he's like literally staring. Gordy's staring at him, and it's my copy, it's on page 404 of the Signet first edition, if you could find one.
Hotshot Rothman over here.
Hotshot over here, yeah. It's actually, it's because he makes the realization of the Keds, because he says, like, he had been sprang out of his Keds. The train had knocked him out of his Keds just as it had knocked the life out of his body. And that's like an image that stays with Gordy forever. But the realization of this, that he's a child, that he's him. I mean, I feel like this is the crux of the entire book. This is actually on 405. He said, that finally rammed it all the way home for me. The kid was dead. The kid wasn't sick. The kid wasn't sleeping. The kid wasn't going to get up in the morning anymore or get the runs from eating too many apples or catch poison ivy or wear out the eraser on the end of his Ticonderoga number 2 during a hard math test. The kid was dead, stone dead. The kid was never going to go out bottling with his friends in the spring, gunny sack over his shoulder to pick up the returnables the retreating snow uncovered. The kid wasn't going to wake up at 2 o'clock a.m. on the morning of November 1st this year, run to the bathroom and vomit up a big glurt of cheap Halloween candy. The kid wasn't going to pull a single girl's braid in homeroom. The kid wasn't going to give a bloody nose or get one. The kid was can't, don't, won't, never, shouldn't, couldn't, wouldn't. He was the side of the battery where the terminal says neg. The fuse you have to put a penny in. The waste basket by the teacher's desk, which always smells of wood shavings from the sharpener and dead orange peels from lunch. The haunted house outside of town where the windows are crashed out. The no trespassing signs whipped across the fields. The attic full of bats. The cellar full of rats. The kid was dead, Mr. Ma'am, young sir, little miss. I could go on all day and never get it right about the distance between his bare feet on the ground and his dirty keds hanging in the bushes. It was 30-plus inches. It was a Google of light years. The kid was disconnected from his keds beyond all hope of reconciliation. He was dead. And, like, notice how, like, all those images are all related to youth. You know? It's not like...
You looked directly at me when you said that, by the way.
You know?
I know what you mean.
But it's, like, it's I think, like, that's important in the sense that he's seeing it from, like Gordy doesn't know anything else beyond that life. Like, he's not talking about him, oh, he's never going to have kids. He's never going to have all this. Like, because Gordy, at that point, hasn't had that yet. And, like, so... It is a realization in that moment of right there of just like what he might have been actually thinking at that point when he's staring at him. And I think that idea that everything can be unplugged is such a sobering thing to realize as a kid. And I think everyone gets it from certain perspectives. I don't know how I found that out. Maybe it was movies, but I doubt it because movies have this sort of like illusion to it. But I don't know. I feel like the once people realize that, that's when you traditionally become an adult. Like, you know, it's even if you're young, it's that realization that this is going to end. You're not going to be here forever. Like, and I feel like that's maybe that's what this whole story is really about. And even with like how it ties to the ending, which obviously we're going to discuss a little bit more, it's just that, yeah, that like things don't last forever. Things come and go. Friends, life, everything. I mean, towns, like it's just how things are.
Well, and the power of that entire statement you read, Mike, has to do with the fact that once again it's a kid's body because of the never will happen. Because if it was a vagrant or somebody in their 40s or something like that, maybe they did have kids. Maybe all these things happened, but when you see the 12-year-old kid, you know it didn't happen and it never will. Yeah. Sorry, were you saying something too, Mac?
Well, I was just going to say that I think it's Gordy kind of being able to tangibly and just by seeing this body has kind of come to terms or closure, I guess, with his brother's death too. Because, he was also just really young, a young kid too. And I think that seeing all that, because you got to wonder, you're like, okay, well, he already had this experience. He's lost his brother. So he's already had all these thoughts and feelings. But seeing it, just like he says, it really drives it home. And
yeah, that's an interesting point also, though. Is the fact that it is the same summer that he did lose Denny. So, I mean, I guess it's weird too because he talks about him being at the funeral too, and so he did see his brother.
Mm-hmm. It might not have been an open casket. I can't remember if it was
I
open
think
casket.
there's a line where it's a closed casket until the funeral, and then there isn't any, as far as I remember.
Yeah,
I reread it this week. But I can't remember if there's a description of the body, but I think there's a line that it's a closed casket and then they open it for the funeral.
Yeah.
The implication seeming to be that it's a particularly gruesome sight in some way, although I'm sure they would have tidied him up.
Yeah. Well, it was a car. Yeah, it was a car accident.
Well, I guess it is interesting because if you look at it as what is a memory that's going to stick out forever? Obviously, you losing an older brother would be a huge thing. It would be something that would last with you forever. But then his memory, he's not writing about his brother for the most part. He's writing about this body. So
we'll talk about. Oh, sorry,
yeah, sorry. No, that's also a huge difference in the film to the book. But yeah, even in the book, I mean, he does mention, and we'll talk about this when we go into Gordy more. But that he's not particularly close with his brother.
No, he's not.
So
but
it's also a very interesting relationship there too.
But he's not particularly antagonistic with his brother either, though. It just was a very kind of copacetic sort of
but they also don't know this kid either at all. So it's something we talked about.
He's the invisible boy at home.
I think he's when we're reading the Gordon's tale here, which is the body, you'd think he's also written 5 other books. And when you read these passages from Stud City, a lot of those are reflections on his childhood.
Oh, totally.
And granted,
Yeah.
they're retconned to fit in the fictional narrative. But we'll talk about Stud City a lot when we get to the
can't wait.
Gordy part. I will talk about it. I think it's actually interesting when I read it again and from an analytical perspective. Anybody have anything else to say, though, about the structure, the format, the hook? Anything else before we get into the next category?
I guess talking about the structure a little bit is interesting.
Look at me. Look at me, teacher.
I feel like this is clearly written in in hindsight with the past and involved the past tense and everything, but he does structure it with this kind of similarity to Carrie, where there's like media that he kind of puts in. We mentioned Stud City, we mentioned Lardass. I think those are the only 2 stories that are in there, right? Yeah. But then he kind of he bounces back and forth into different times too, because like at the end he goes back to an anecdote with him and his kids that was recently.
He also talks about the first time he was in New York. He's sometimes he goes back to the present.
It's even though there are only 2 fictional stories, I feel like the novella moves kind of like a conversation, where he'll interrupt one thought to talk about another thought, so that so that the next thing will be in a better context. Like I was skimming through looking for the casket thing, and as they're talking about, hey, do you guys want to see a dead body? Then we're interrupted with the Penny's story, and then we get some more about Denny, and all of that's before they even start making plans. So it's like it just sort of jumps around. Sometimes I think to add context because he wants to make sure the story is understood, and I think sometimes it's a little bit like putting your hand to a flame and you have to yank away for a second, so he'll sort of wander off for a moment.
It's very stream of consciousness too. Like one thing will lead to another story about this and that and this, and then back to the story though.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do like that allusion to like the hand to the flame. Like it's almost too much to go into it right then. So let's talk about this.
And not for King,
and
for
Gordon.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's very, it's in terms of how he writes, it's very traditional King in a sense too, because he laces in these short stories when he's trying to explain certain situations or certain characters. Like when you first talk about Teddy, God, we get like a ton of backstory with him, and it's almost like another short story in that sense. And that's why I've always loved about King is that, he did that great with, I think he really started doing that more with like Salem's Lot. Like Carrie was pretty, I guess he does it with Carrie also, but Salem's Lot was mostly, I feel like this is more akin to because of the whole world building he has to do for Castle Rock. But I do love these little like tangents that'll go on to give more backstory to why Chris is saying this certain thing, or why Teddy is acting this certain way, and like we get kind of that sort of tangential storytelling that doesn't really affect the flow of the book at all. Like it actually does feel really. Everything always moves. I don't have actually any problems with the flow in this book whatsoever.
I want to say something about that. Yeah, there are chapter breaks in this book, and as involved as I am in the story, I never have any issues with him going back to New York. I never have any issues with him talking about something else that happened when he was an adult at all. The flow is incredible, and again, it's a testament to King. Obviously this is a Stephen King podcast, but we.
It reminds me a lot. Like we said this when we did The Long Walk, but it really does remind me of The Long Walk in a lot of ways.
Chris reminds me of.
Chris definitely reminds me of the character. God, what is his name?
I feel bad for forgetting his name.
But the main, the friend in The Long Walk, the third to last person that died, I think. But the flow, the way he writes that book is very similar to this too. Maybe not as much world building because I think he definitely goes all in with Castle Rock in this one. I feel like you actually learn more about Castle Rock in this book than you do in the previous Castle Rock books that we've read.
Yeah, because you got Cujo, and Cujo obviously takes place in Castle Rock, but it's much more just about that family,
that farm too.
And then Dead Zone is just a third, not even a third of the Dead Zone.
Not even.
And I think it's the time where he's like, I'm really gonna dive into this town and what it's all about, which is terrific. Obviously,
Peter McVries.
McVries.
Oh God, how can I forget that?
Well, McVries is one of my favorite characters from The Long Walk, a book I really loved a lot. let's
I
talk
think-
about
I
some
think-
more characters from the body in a segment we like to call mysteriously Zeros and Villains.
I'm gonna have to kill this fucking clown. Welcome to the Losers Club, asshole!
Get a job.
You could have just put that in as a sound cue, you know?
Yeah, but we gotta stay on brand. We gotta stay on brand. Yeah.
Oh boy. So who do we want to talk about first here?
Well, there's a character named Gordon LaChance who, again, tells a story. We should probably talk about
Yeah,
him
but
at some point.
he's barely in it.
Yeah, he's not really the focus of this. For me personally, I really want to talk about the Stud City chapter, but if we want to talk about the other adventures of Gordy first.
Well, might as well start with Gordy.
Yeah.
That's my favorite film about a talking pig.
boy.
No, I'm just joking.
That's third to me. It goes
Boy.
Babe, Pig in the City, Babe, and then Gordy. So,
Oh, Babe Pig in the City is your number one talking pig movie?
love Babe, Pig in the City.
What about Charlotte's Web? He's talking pig in
I
that.
take it back. I love the animated Charlotte's Web
Me too.
with Paul Lind as Templeton.
You have a good Paul Lynn joke, but we're
God,
not
I'm not
going
going
to
to tell
go
him
into
the podcast.
We're not going to tell in the podcast.
There's a great Paul Lind story. Seek me
involving
on
a
Twitter.
plane.
Yes.
Involving a plane. Just go find it. Anyway,
We derailed
Well, why
20
don't-
seconds into this segment. It's
Justin,
incredible.
I know. Why don't you talk about Stud City so we can kind of get that out of the way?
Let's do it because I understand 100% what King was going for with this mini chapter. I'll break it down a little bit here,
Yeah,
if
go
I
for
may. If I may, of course,
go
I'm
for
reading
it.
from Stud City, which, as we all know, was originally published in Greenspun Quarterly, issue 45, fall 1970, and I use this by permission. So there's a section when Gordy is talking about how his parents pretty much act like he's invisible, and have always favored Denny. And he writes, one night when I was 9 to see what would happen, I said, please pass those goddamn spuds. And my mom said, Denny, Auntie Grace called today and she asked after you and Gordon. In Stud City, after Chico curses at his father, for a moment his father only looks at him and then throws the frank he has been holding. It hits Chico in the chest, spraying mustard on his sweater and on the chair. Say that word again and I'll break your nose for you, smartass. And this also goes back to a discussion between Gordy and Chris, in which Gordy wishes, his parents to blow up every once in a while, or wish that they would shake him.
yeah.
Later on, Gordy talks about a nightmare he has regarding Denny. He writes, it was the closet that preyed on my mind, and if my mother sent me in to get Denny's postcard album or a shoebox of photographs so she could look at them, I would imagine that door swinging slowly open while I stood rooted to the spot with horror. I would imagine him pallid and bloody in the darkness, the side of his head walloped in, a gray vein cake of blood and brains drying on the shirt. I would imagine his arms coming up, his bloody hands hooking into claws, and he would be croaking, it should have been you, Gordon, it should have been you.
Which is Marshall Bell's line.
Which I do actually want, I like, we'll talk about that in the movie. But anyway, in Stud City, he writes, he knows that sometimes the room spooks him at night. Sometimes he thinks that the closet door will swing open and Johnny will be standing there, his body charred and twisted and blackened, his teeth yellow dentures poking out of wax as partially melted and rehardened, and Johnny will be whispering, get out of my room, Chico. If you lay a hand on my dodge, I'll fucking kill you. Got it? Ultimately, there's a lot of pages for Stud City.
That's the problem.
And it's poorly written, right?
Yeah.
It's very misogynistic and everything
Yeah.
else. But I feel like this is a way of King apologizing for his shitty earlier works, especially the Blockman books. Because he even writes pretty fucking melodramatic, right? It'll
Yeah,
have this
I was-
product of undergraduate creative writing workshops down every page because that's just what it was, at least up to a certain point. It seems painfully derivative and painfully sophomoric to me now. Styled by Hemingway, except we've got the whole thing in the present tense for some reason. How too fucking trendy. Theme by Faulkner. Could anything be more serious, more literally?
Yeah.
So,
But I would say the body
apology
is
accepted,
that.
but
But that's what I mean. We didn't really talk about this in the hook as much because I think, I think this ties into the whole the symbolism of Gordy for King himself. Is that I do feel like the body almost is his meditation on his own success. I mean, granted, I think this was written around the time of The Stand, maybe,
no, this was Salem's Lot.
So this is Salem's Lot era, okay, which
he
actually
finished,
makes sense.
which he
Then.
finished before he published this years later. I'm
But
assuming.
think about how many times we discussed in the earlier podcasts, like about his insecurities as a writer. I mean, even the character Ben Mears is this like dreamy character that it was somebody that he probably sees as like the ideal sort of, ooh, this could be a celebrity style writer who gets the girl and is the hero and everything. And if you go back to even to the history of Carrie, like he didn't even have enough like belief in him. He threw it out, and it was Tabitha that saved it and made him who he is. And I think like especially when you get to the final chapters in this, when he's still like pained at the idea that he could possibly have a life from just playing pretend. I mean, and then for you to talk about Chico in this way it's very interesting. Like, because I had that self-deprecating chapter also, because that's when it started coming to me. I was like, oh my God, maybe this whole story, because he talks about how it's autobiographical. Like, maybe this is him, especially if he wrote it around Salem's Lot. He is wrestling with his own success at that point, and like, and I think that maybe there are demons that are here. I mean, I don't think the whole brother thing is interesting, but that he would parallel it with losing a brother, but. I mean,
it's not 100% autobiographical.
No, it's not. But like that whole idea of him wrestling with this success and the fact that he's a writer, he has a guilt of being a writer, which is, I've never really thought about that as a writer before. Like the idea that just that line at the end where he feels that because he's playing pretend, like that he's not worthy or something. I mean, that's like an interesting fear. To me, and I think, like, when you think of it, the body less as this coming of age story and almost as I guess a coming of age story for King in a sense, as a professional, not as a kid but as a professional. I think that's like makes this story even more impacting. It makes me kind of wish that David Lynch had voiced the narration in Stand By Me, the movie. Instead of Richard Dreyfuss.
I wouldn't have been able to get through it.
Yeah, no joke.
That would have been brutal.
Yeah.
But for me, the Stud City chapter, I understand what he was trying to go for here, but the fact that they don't really revisit this type of intercutting later on, it just seems very out of place.
Well, they do
by the
with
end of it.
the lard ass.
Yeah, but that's definitely
that's
just a
part
straight
of the
up
story that he's talking to kids. It's not just like out of nowhere.
There's not a lot of parallels.
But this was
with his
prompted
life
from
with lard ass,
the image of his closet, though.
Yeah, but I'm saying is, why would you go into this long chapter here to show how he's a writer, and then not? I figured they would have returned to that with maybe another excerpt from a story later on.
No, I definitely think it was a weak decision to put that much in there.
Yeah.
I think an excerpt about that image would have been fine. But I guess I imagine he saw, this is an opportunity for me to do some of the more external media, which is like, Gordy's a writer, so I'm going to put some of his stories in there. And then he just kind of was like, oh shit, I've told the story. If I just have an excerpt, it's going to seem out of whack. We need to finish it. We need to get all the way to the end. And it's like, because it's like what, 8 pages long?
It's pretty long.
I mean, it's the only point where actually I do feel like the flow is kind of broken. In the
it's 8 pages, but Mike, I think we both have the same type of paperback where it's that really, really tiny font. So it's probably like 85 pages for somebody else's edition.
Well, my problem with it is that the payoff is kind of nice, right? Like although in fact the payoff goes on too long too. Yeah. Like, yes, totally. Like we get it, it's bad. Yes, we get that you get that it's bad. Like we're all on the same page. Let's move things along. But we'll get to Lardass, I'm assuming, eventually. But what I like so much about that is it comes from telling the story around the campfire, cuts immediately to the version that was then later published, and then cuts back. So it's tying the adult to the child, and this is also tying the adult to the child, but in a much less interesting way. Yeah. And I don't know what the solution to that would be. I don't know if any pages of Stud City were in the bottom of his closet somewhere, right? But like, if there was some way other than just the processing of grief and feeling isolated and neglected, if there was just some way to link it a little more nimbly and to not have it be quite so jarring. Yeah. Because I forgot I've read this story, I don't know, 15 times, and I forgot that was even in there because it's just not vital at all.
Out of nowhere.
And in a story that's this short, it's one thing if it's in The Stand, right? I mean, it would be really weird. But if it's in The Stand, that's one thing. This is like, it's so nimble already, and it's so sparse, and it's exactly as long as it needs to be, with the exception of these 8 pages. And I just feel like we could have accomplished it in a more interesting way, or a briefer way, or something. It's a lot.
In terms of the excerpt, I think he could have even said, and one of my first books I wrote was Stud City. I really talked about for like a couple paragraphs, and then we're moving on. We don't need like a full excerpt. You can just literally say, I tried to tackle these things with my family, but I was unable to really accurately do so. I could only go so far with it. Oh, that's interesting, Gordy. Let's go back to the trail. I mean, I don't know. That's my final take on Stud City, which is my only real negative when it comes to this story.
Honestly,
I just want to get it out of the way now.
Honestly, like the only real pound cake in this story, also.
Exactly, and you know what's funny? The reason I did not include that all the sex that happens in Stud City in the pound cake section personally
it's not.
is because I don't believe that's actually King writing poorly.
Right.
King is writing as a character writing poorly. It's like we got some Inception stuff going over here.
I feel like it's a little like Halloween for him, where he gets to be like,
this isn't really me. Hey, I'm giving him a pass here. I didn't include.
So
any
what
of it.
you're saying is this is the equivalent of Stephen King playing as a Third Eye Blind cover band
Yes.
for Halloween.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, exactly. That
Maybe,
is a
well,
perfect
maybe he's Loretta Lynn,
analogy.
because the only thing I really love about Stud City is that it always reminds me of Fist City, which is my favorite Loretta Lynn song.
Well,
And a
since
great karaoke
And a great
jam.
beer.
It is a great beer.
Yeah, well, that's
and
true.
a great karaoke jam. Pro tip.
why don't we also talk about the Revenge of Lord S. Hogan then, since we're talking about this other story.
Cool.
Sure.
And what I was going to say, what we were just talking about, how it's so much more crucial to. I mean, well, half of it's them talking about it around the campfire, but I do like that they jump to the published version, and then when they come back, I love how Teddy and Vern are disenchanted with the ending. And I love that, like, Gordy's already having this disconnect where he's kind of grown up in a way that they can't relate to it. They can't see that as the ending. They want like something crazy to happen or him to go off and have this happy ending. Like, I think Teddy wants, he
wants to kill his father, and that's
yeah,
when
he wants to kill his father. Then he goes
Chris and
off
Gordy
and
have
he
an
like,
exchange.
joins something. Joins the
Texas
Lone
Rangers.
The Texas
Yeah.
Rangers, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just
That says a lot
Well,
about
the
Teddy there,
story
too.
has a purpose.
it's sad.
in
It's
this.
and
Like-
yeah, no, absolutely, and that's why I don't mind going there. And the story is short, and it's really
And the
it's
story is
really
more
entertaining,
compelling.
too.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's something a kid would totally write and
Totally.
get right.
And that you can then see an adult also writing, because it taps into this sense of being a kid and powerless and wronged and helpless and hurt and just trying to find some sort of revenge.
Yeah.
And it's in this visceral form. But then the ending, not the ending to the story, but the ending he doesn't want to tell them, the ending they pester him for. And then he says, well, he probably gets beat up by his dad. And then they just start adding pukes a lot to calling him lard ass, and they're really upset, is essentially the ending we get to this book, right? Like, they could have all gone home and the story could have ended there, but that would have been unsatisfying to the Teddys of the world.
Yeah.
So instead we get this explanation of everything that happens to them all. And I mean, obviously adult Gordon is doing relatively well, but is also dealing with some not great stuff and seems to be pretty troubled by grief. And then these other three men are dead.
Yeah.
And it's so clever and thoughtful in ways that Stud City is not.
And relevant to
definitely.
the story overall too, I think. And the funny thing about that story is it does end on a funny joke where the mayor, I think, says, "I declare this contest a draw."
Oh.
Like, that's a great ending, right?
The kid says,
the
I
kid
declare.
says it, so that's a
He
great
takes
ending.
this sticky microphone and
Yes.
says, I declare this contest a draw, and walks home like, you can hear him in his shoes, in your head going, squish, 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 because there's just puke
And
everywhere.
that's a great ending, right?
Yeah.
Yep, it's great.
But of course, like you said, like Teddy and Vern, that's just not enough for them.
Well, isn't it around this time in the book that because I have it on page, where does he say? So like on page 361. Let me see.
Oh, you know what? We're reading quotes, so I should probably say this. This is obviously, as we all know, from The Revenge of Lord S. Hogan by Gordon LaChance, originally published in Cavalier Magazine, March 1975, used by permission. And by the way, Cavalier Magazine is something that King wrote in quite a lot in the 70s as well. I thought that's early King's Dominion for everybody.
There is an interesting point around the Lard ass scene where, again, King kind of puts in his own little personal anecdotes there. Where he talks about how Gordy's terrified of looking at a typewriter and being lost for words, for good words. I think having that around another short story is more. I feel like this is a confessional almost. And again, like it's right around just the fact that it's around Salem's Lot that he actually wrote this is really interesting. I mean, I imagine he had to tweak some of this stuff.
No, I guarantee he did, because Bannerman's in here. There's a lot
Yeah.
more Castle Rock stuff. But he definitely, like a first draft of this was written while he was writing Salem's Lot. And he finished it before the different seasons came out.
So think again, and sorry to hammer this in, but this is something that I was fascinated with in the beginning of this podcast, and I still am, especially as we're going back to some of this older stuff, is think about, all right, so he writes Salem's Lot, which was a success also, and he's writing this, And let's think that if Carrie was something that he might have thought was a fluke, which he's admitted to thinking it was. That's why he did the Bachman thing also not too long after this. The ineffectualness of his own feelings is very interesting to me, and it makes, and again, I think that makes this story so much more compelling.
I agree about the confessional, but there's too much in here that makes me think that a good deal of this was rewritten in the early '80s, because he even talks. There's something near the
True,
end that
but
is
there's
just right on the nose where he says, "I'm a writer now." Like I said, a lot of critics think what I write is shit.
Yes.
A lot of the time I think they're right. I sold a book; it was made into a movie.
And I would
got
agree
good
with that.
reviews.
Yeah.
The second book was made into a movie as well as the third. I told you it's fucking absurd.
I would
happy. Like, so-
guarantee you that stuff was written in the early 80s.
Oh, it had to have been.
And this
Yeah.
stuff right here with like the lard ass thing and all this
Yeah.
other stuff was probably written around the time of like Salem's Lot. And like I don't think that conclusion that you had just read right there
Yeah.
could have been written around the time when he actually initially wrote.
Oh
this
no,
short
there's
story.
no way.
There's
no
also
way.
that line
like-
about if you had told me when I was a kid that I'd be able to turn this into $1 million.
Yeah.
Which I think also could only really have been written once the King snowball started rolling down the hill.
Totally.
Agreed.
Not
I
a
agree.
cocaine illusion. That was just. I was just.
Oh, he's definitely in the throes of it. By my add here during different seasons.
So I'm
We're
basically
like right in the middle of the King snowball effect, literal snowball effect.
So he writes this ideal
Or unliteral,
character
not literal,
in Ben Mears, and I think the more realistic one is Gordy LaChance for King.
100% agree.
In terms of an actual writer being in a story of his.
I don't think Gordon LaChance is writing Air Dance. No,
Which is
shots
probably-
fired at Ben Mears.
I just want to
Yeah.
say I think Gretna is a great name for a town.
I do too.
Oh,
I do
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
You know what it reminds
But
me
you know
of?
who
It
does
reminds
like
me of
being
Greta. And there's only one thing that Greta reminds me of. Not Greta Gerwig, but Greta from Nightmare on Elm Street Part 5. When
Oh God, the
most
Bon Appetit.
God,
Oh,
awful.
gross.
Anyway, one of the other things I love about Gordy is, Chris recognizes the fact that he can see right through people, and Allison alluded to this earlier, is that he does see through people in the sense that, but I don't think he understands. That's you were saying that he sees that there is issues, and he sees there's problems, but I don't think he knows how to kind of approach it or articulate exactly what I'm doing right now. And I think that's where the older LaChance comes in when he's writing in hindsight. But and as a kid, it's interesting because I feel like that sort of quirk could have been really precocious and been like, oh God, what a little brainiac or whatever. But no, his own torturous being is so nuanced and compelling in ways that I don't really know I've ever read for a kid before. It's a, I don't know. I feel like he captures that window of being before you're even a teenager really well with Gordy.
You should check out a book. I don't know if you two have read it. I don't think you've read it. It came around, I think, the late 90s, early aughts. It's about this boy magician who lives underneath his stairs. Harry Potter is his name. I forgot the name of the book, but he's an interesting character in his own right. He's not too precocious, but he seems.
Yeah, I read Chamber of Secrets, and I thought it was pretty good.
But if you're looking at this as an autobiographical to an extent, if he's just speaking about his own childhood and having these thoughts and feelings, it's going to be probably the most in-depth, character that, at least from the point of view of a kid, if he's actually just this is baby King, and how he saw the world. And so, you're going to get that complex character immediately.
And I think the age alone too, because it's 12, you're still soaking in information. You're still retaining, and even though these kids have been through a lot, this is not their final mode in a sense. They're still going to be dismissing things. It's still, despite going through so much, it's still going to be impossible for them to totally understand what's happening to them.
Well, that's one of the things that I think links Gordy and Chris is that there are just people in the world that are deeply empathetic. That doesn't necessarily even mean they're nice. Mm-hmm. They just they can understand the motivations that people may have, sometimes better than those people understand themselves. And as a person who is deeply empathetic, I can tell you it's not a great trait most of the time. To
agree.
be able to look at somebody and know even before they really do that they just don't like you. Yeah. You can just tell sometimes, or you can just kind of tell when for example, a relationship is starting to sour even really before the other person in this relationship may be able to articulate it. It's torturous. And I think that's one of the things that links these two people. There's the moment when they both sort of simultaneously understand that the only way to get Teddy off of this moment that he's on, like one of his big upset moments, is to tell him that if he gets arrested, he can't join the army.
Yeah.
And recognizing that that's cruel because A, later acknowledges they all already know he's never going to be able to join the army. And B, they don't even know if it's true, but they both understand how he works in a way that Teddy doesn't understand about himself. So they can manipulate him. And it's just, it makes for great art, but like a really lousy personal life sometimes. And that's one of the things that I found most engaging about those two characters and about their friendship.
I think there's a struggle in having like depression, a strong imagination, and empathy.
Yeah.
It's because I think David Letterman was on, I think maybe Norm Macdonald, and he talked about how he gets really depressed. And he says that the big thing about depression that he's learned over the years is that when you're depressed, all your filters are off, and you can truly see how things really are. Like your empathy grows in a way that you can't shut it off. Like you said, Allison, like you can just tell, especially if something's really, really wrong sometimes, especially when you're in a really bad depressed state, as opposed to just being kind of in your serene state. And I just realized that depression, imagination, and empathy, DIE, which is really morbid.
Wow.
Jesus Christ, Justin. We're getting deep here on the Losers Club today.
But back to Lord S. Hogan.
Back to the hilarious story of Lord S. Hogan, who takes his revenge by vomiting on people. Stay tuned for our Psych 101 podcast later on this week. But anyway, I agree with everybody, what you're saying about, especially I can't imagine being a 12-year-old in this group with Vern and Teddy, who do not appear to be very empathetic at all. And obviously he and Chris are, and doesn't necessarily mean it's a great thing.
But he's also very... he's also very realistic about that empathy too. Like, I mean, like look at the dream that he has, when that really weird, surreal dream that made me think of Silver Springs in Florida, where he's in the water and then he's trying to save Chris, and then it's Vern and Teddy like are these like kind of almost like seaweed creatures that are like holding him back. And it's like that's his own realization of knowing that those two kids are going to be the ones that are going to hold Chris back, and he needs to save Chris. And that's a really, I don't know if, and again, I don't know if it's the adult realization or just him as a kid. I think it is as him as a kid. He does realize these things towards the end.
Because he's reflecting.
Because Chris is the one that tells
him
him
the story about
Chris
that. And I
tells him
really
that.
want to talk about that during our soon sure to be like 6-hour word processor of the God section, because there's so much beautiful prose in this. But there's a lot in that section I really want to talk about later on.
I mean, I think it's. We should probably move over to Chris though, because that's a lot of. I mean, you already started talking about Chris, and
Well, I was going to say about Gordy though. Like, I love how.
no, we've already moved on from Gordon. So,
I know.
go for
You
it.
said your part on.
yeah.
But no, just his relationship with his brother, I think, is written so realistically. I think it's a little romanticized in the movie, but in the book, just the fact that, like, you know, he was his brother, and yeah, there were times where they were close, there were times where they weren't, but he was just kind of like another guy. And I like how he says that, because he wasn't old enough when he lost his brother to really remember or value the relationship that, you know what I mean? Like, when you get older,
he was also like
you're
10
able
years
to,
older, right? So he didn't really live with him that long, too.
Right. And so when you are growing up, I mean, if you grow up and you had a brother or a sister, you are able to look back and value that, and look at the moments where you're at odds and see the value in it, or how that changed or shaped your life. And he doesn't have that with Denny. And I think that's also a huge disconnect with his parents, because, you know, they had all this extra time with him and were able to create this relationship. And since his death, they're just, you know, not creating those relationships with Gordy at all.
I mean, look at the image at the end when he finally comes in. He thinks he's going to get yelled at, and they don't even notice. I mean, she just sits down and is like, "Hey, where were you at?" And
I told Dad or told Mom,
yeah, and then she just sits there and starts talking about Denny again, and he's just like, "It's a bitch" or whatever. He's like, "Life's a bitch" or something like that, and it's just like so heartbreaking. I mean, it's heartbreaking on multiple levels. It's heartbreaking, you know, when you go in the mom's shoes, because clearly, you know, they had this like football star son that was going to do something, and then they don't really understand their other kid, you know. And again, I get it, because like if you think about it, that time period, this is a kid that clearly just wants to be a writer, which is always kind of, you know, the death knell for a lot of parents, I imagine, when they're like, "Hey, I want to be a creative." I'm sure a lot of parents get, especially back then. You're thinking back in the 50s. I'm sure that's like a nightmare to hear about. So it's like this, you know, for her to like, she's in this zombie state. Clearly, I imagine the relationship with the husband and wife is probably awful. And so I feel for her, and then I feel for the fact that like you have this kid that is coming home, there's like leech spots all over him, and he's just like sitting there, just.
But Gordy also, and to drive home a point Allison was talking about earlier, just about empathy and everything. There are moments when he had like he can't articulate or figure out what it is that's going on and when it's happening, but he knows it feels different. Like there's a moment with Chris, or there's a moment when they flip the coin and they all get Goochers. There's a moment there where he's like, you know, he prophetically can see that, like, you know, obviously he knows now in the future, but that their fates are kind of, you know, laid out for them. Like there's something bad's going to happen to them, and he gets away. You know, I mean, even though at the time when he's flipping, he's kind of like the odd man out and has to go get this stuff from the store.
Yeah.
But there's like a few moments like that where they all kind of realize that this is like this is probably going to be the best time in their lives, but they don't really know that at the time. It just feels different. He's like, something's different here.
Yeah.
And I know, I feel like I'm a very empathetic person. I know that I've definitely had those feelings like in the past, and then only was able to realize it later on, like, oh, that's why that felt so weird. But yeah, I love that how he's written. I think it's just very, very realistic, and I think that I was able to really pull. I don't know. I mean, Gordy and Chris especially, I think are just written perfectly in this.
I think you would be the Gordy out of the Losers Club.
Oh yeah, so you're all gonna die before me.
That's
I'm
probably
down
it.
with that.
Mac, actually, true story. Back in 2003, he actually pulled a gun on Kiefer Sutherland. So
You hear that, Kiefer?
Actually,
I'm coming for you.
stop drinking, Kiefer.
So you're imagining that we're talking about the movie version of Gordy, because I see you as Chris Chambers, so you pulled the gun in the book.
I've always wanted to get killed at a Jack in the Box. So
Yeah.
Oh God,
Jesus Christ.
Jack in the Boxes are, by the way,
I've never
Jack in
eaten-
the Box in Arizona.
There's a
They
Jack
were
in the Box
definitely
in
a Western
Austin,
thing.
in
so
Austin, Texas.
They just haven't made their way to the Midwest or Florida.
Wasn't
Speaking
there
of
a huge?
Jack in the Boxes, Chris.
Oh yeah. Yeah, nice seg.
Great
Just like
segue. I was like,
deflated on that seg there.
I thought you were going to do it.
You guys can continue to talk about Jack in the Box. Where are we going to go with that?
No, let's talk about Chris Chambers. Let's go ahead and start with Chris. Who wants to talk about Chris?
I do.
Allison.
So I think that Chris is just an incredibly well-written, thoughtfully developed character. And part of why it's so genius is that sometimes you meet these kids who are young and actually what their circumstances are, wrong side of the tracks, not the wrong side of the tracks, doesn't really matter. But for some reason, they've been put in a position where they have to be the grown-up in the room at a very young age. And then they're this goes back to what I was saying earlier, then they're just not kids anymore. And it's like they're a little adult in a kid's body. For whatever reason, they're taking care of their siblings. They're thinking about adult things. They're confronting adult realities. And it just kind of fades away. They leave it behind. And that's something that you don't often see a lot in fiction. And I am a sucker for a coming-of-age story, especially if it's set in a school. And if it's a school for magic, so much the better. But
Mike, that's a Harry Potter reference.
I was gonna say, I read Chamber of Secrets once, and I thought it was pretty cool.
But a lot of times they get this wrong, right? Like sort of random example, My Girl, which I think is a pretty great movie, honestly. That's the one where Macaulay Culkin gets stung to death by bees.
I'm more of a My Girl 2 fan. I love they made a sequel to this.
Mike stands Ross and O'Brien.
But in that movie, the moment when you get a sense that she is figuring out what adult life is going to be like, there are two. One is when she gets her period, which is just kind of lazy writing, I'm not going to lie. And then the other is when her friend dies. And those are definitely things that would bring about a sense of heightened adulthood. But it doesn't even begin to touch on what it's like to deal with the death of a parent, to end up spending a lot of time on your own, just have to start thinking about like where you're going to get lunch from and what you're going to make for dinner. And that's something that you can tell without them even really going into it. There are just a few allusions. There's that mention, it just guts me, near the end of the book when he's in the hospital and he has to call his neighbor to tell his mother to remove the light bulb from the the cellar stairs.
Yeah.
And that is an adult decision.
Yeah.
That is a
calculated.
child making a calculated adult decision that's instinctual.
Because they
and I
talk
think
about the
it's-
brother is gone, right?
Yeah.
So even the older brother
he has to
can't-
call the woman who. It's the same woman who saved him, right? Who saw him on the streets and took him to the hospital. I think, right?
Yeah.
No,
person he
that's
calls?
because
Is that
that's
the same person he
Gordy
calls?
is the one who gets taken on the streets.
No, but
Wait,
there's
No,
a-
I'm saying, but
Chris
the
is
woman
at
sees
home.
him
It's their
bleeding in the
neighbor.
street, and she takes him to the hospital, right?
Gordy's the one that gets beat up in the street. Chris gets beat up at
No,
home.
but I'm saying, but then
'Cause he
Chris
walks
is walking
with
down the street
with the
after he's
broken
been beaten
arm.
up, and
Yeah.
I think this
Oh,
woman
I see what you're saying.
sees
Yes.
him and takes him to the hospital.
But
And
this-
that's the same woman he calls, I believe.
But it's just the idea that, like, 'cause, I
Sad.
mean, Oddball is a piece of shit anyway, and like the fact that he
Eyeball.
abandons his his family, and like Chris has to take up the reins
Yeah.
for it is.
Well, think about
It's,
the coincidence. You got Eyeball Chambers, who's Chris's older brother.
And then you have Vern's brother
Vern's
too.
older brother, Chris Tessio.
He's an asshole.
He's an asshole. I think Teddy's actually the oldest of that. It might be I can't remember how many siblings, or if he has siblings. But then Gordy's
Teddy doesn't
brother
have any.
is a
Teddy
nice
doesn't
guy,
have any
he's
like
dead.
bully siblings
I mean,
though. He's
yeah,
kind
he
of like
does-
the odd man
he
out.
has the bully
He just
father.
has the father that's up in the loony bin.
Yeah, true.
Anyway, I think that you can tell just from how he exists on the page from almost the very beginning.
Yeah.
Not just because he doesn't act like the tough guy.
No.
Like he's not like the ringleader. He's just the grown up in the room, and so everybody defers to him.
Yeah.
And it makes literally everything that happens to him so much sadder. Like all of it, just all of it. The self-awareness to realize that unless he makes a bunch of very different choices, he's just going to end up like everybody else in his family. The recognition that he can't ever drink beer because he might be an alcoholic,
I was
which
gonna
is a
say,
fear
young
I
age.
had as a child
Yeah.
for years. Like if I I just knew in my bones that if I ever touched a drop of alcohol, I was going to be an alcoholic. Spoiler, I am not. But yay for me. Yeah. But that's a super real fear, and it's all thinking about what his life is going to be like when he's 20, 30, 40, and what kid thinks like that? A kid that's had to be acting like an adult for literally years.
Yeah.
Well, and that's why I think it's so key that Chris is the one that fires the gun. I mean, granted, it's so
Yeah.
iconic in the movie that it's Gordy that takes the stand, but I think it's so key that Chris does it because it does feel more about Chris's story than anything else. Because obviously, this is what prompts him to write the story to begin with. Because Chris dies. Well, no, that's just in the movie. But I think Chris's death is obviously the one that hits him the hardest because
He was still kind of
so close with him and stuff. But this does feel like Chris's story more than Gordy's in a sense, in that he's actually like Chris maybe be the subject that Gordy's actually writing about. Because if you think about it, the arc for Chris is so much more pronounced than actually Gordy's in the sense. Like he's the one that takes the gun and stands up to Ace. He's the one that, even though that Gordy does stay with him and stand right by him the entire time, but it is Chris that does make the stand and says, no, fuck you, Ace. Like you go. Like, he's got the gun. He's going to take the fall for that. And it's him that that Chris actually does make the efforts to marginalize himself with his other loser friends and try to become something. And like the fact that he does end up dead at the end is just that it's just
in such an
hits so
unceremonious
hard.
way. Is even
Yeah,
more
well, it ties back
sad,
to
awful.
Well, it ties back into what into Ray Brower. And that nothing's guaranteed in this life. That you're a young kid doesn't mean that you're gonna have a future. Doesn't mean no matter how hard you work, doesn't mean that you're gonna that anything's gonna be that you're gonna have something that's given to you. There is no privilege in the sense there is just what it is, and
Right, and his death is so random.
yeah, it is.
It was just chance.
Well, it's random.
People got in an argument in front of him, and they knifed him right in the neck. Yeah.
But it speaks to his own sort of what Allison was saying was like his own empathy and his way of that was his upbringing was that he had to take control of every bad situation.
Yeah, and he
Trying
tries
to make
to step
peace.
in the way.
Yeah.
And that's yeah. I just wanted to talk. You guys mentioned a few things and about his whole speech about the how friends drag you down, or just like his insight on that, or like when Gordy shoots the gun and then he like has that real moment with him really quickly where he's like, "Hey, listen, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was loaded," and because he knows that he's like really upset. Like whereas any kids would probably just like rag on him and just like drive that home, and then they wouldn't have that realization until way later that, hey, maybe I should like make peace. I understand how this is upsetting you. You know, he's such an adult right out the gate, and it's just heartbreaking. Down to when he talks about with Gordy about the teacher.
Well, I want to talk about that now because as much as Chris tries to be there, especially for Gordy, I feel like he's almost afraid to cry out for help of his own, because even Gordy knows how shitty Chris's life has been, but there's only so much you can do as a 12-year-old. And so that beautiful scene where it's just Gordy and him talking out in the woods about the woman, or I guess the teacher. So the story, as we all know, is he steals the milk money. The rumor is true. He has stolen the milk money, but he kind of suggests, well, what if I went back to that teacher and I gave back the money? And then what if that teacher bought a dress and said that I never returned the money and I get in trouble? And I think that's, in terms of the fall from innocence, I think it's also a moment where you realize, oh, even your teacher, who you feel should be like the model of goodness in your life and the education and everything else, even they can turn out to be rotten people. And that story in itself is brutal to read, especially the injustice of trying to turn a new leaf and not being allowed to, because they're taking advantage of the fact that people already think that you're shit and they're going to side with you either way. Powerful moment in the book for me.
For me, it's honestly when he confronts Gordy early, like right after the lard-ass story, because like, you know, Gordy's still tortured about the fact that his endings, he's like, oh, well, this ending was stupid, they were right, Vern and Teddy, and he doesn't get it, that, you know, stop trying to appeal to them. It's like, it's so metaphorical to his own, like, Gordy hasn't grown up in the sense of realizing that these kids are not going to be here forever, but Chris sees it. He sees right through that. And it's when Chris just says, like, you know, and it's he's just like, they'll get your, and it's like, don't even think that way, you know, they'll get your stories, not like Vernon and Teddy, you know. And he's just saying, like, you know, stop fucking worrying about these friends and start, you know, being who you are. And he's like, don't let your parents affect you either, because and he talks about, like, King has this great writing about how because he basically says, Chris is like, it's asshole if your friends can drag you down. I know about you and your folks. They don't give a shit about you. Your big brother was the one they cared about. Like my dad, when Frank got thrown into the stockade in Portsmouth, that was when he started always being mad at us kids and hitting us all the time. Your dad doesn't beat on you, but maybe that's even worse. He's got you asleep. You could tell him you were enrolling in the fucking shop division, and you know what he'd do? He'd turn to the next page in his paper and say, well, that's nice, Gordon. Go ask your mother what's for dinner. And don't try to tell me different. I've met him. And it's so, like, it's just so well written too about his, like, the personality is so strong here that it even comes through just in the way it's delivered in the dialogue. And
well, that's why Gordy,
you know,
even in Stud City, he makes his father this reactionary character.
Yeah.
Like Chris says, you know, that Gordy would rather him be, you know.
And then that's a sobering experience for Gordy too, because I mean, like what King says right here, and I think this is his Chambers MVP moment for me, even over him standing up to Ace. He stands up to his best friend, and King puts to such a good, he just puts it so well. He says, his face looked like he was expecting me to take a swing at him. He's talking about Chris. It was set and unhappy in the green gold late afternoon late. He had broken the cardinal rule for kids in those days. You could say anything about another kid. You could rank him to the dogs and back, but you didn't say a bad word ever about his mom and dad. That was the fabled automatic. The same way not inviting your Catholic friends home to dinner on Friday unless you checked to make sure that they weren't having meat was the fabled automatic. If a kid ranked out your mom and dad, you had to feed him some knuckles. And Gordy doesn't, because it's so accepting and it's such a sobering realization. I think honestly, that is Gordy's big realization. Like in this, one of the biggest realizations for Gordy is that, like, he needs to just own up to who he is and stop worrying about trying to appease his parents. Stop worrying, and that's why maybe he doesn't even give a shit about what his mom says at the table at the end. He's just like, this is the way of the life.
It is.
Yeah.
Let's go ahead and talk. Let's get transition actually, Mike, because we can talk about the drowning part of this book, which is really resonated to me when I first read this as a kid. And, you know, there's just certain people in your life, I think we've all been through this in our lives, everybody has, where you have to cut loose from people at a certain point, you know, whether it's something that they've done or whether it's something you think they might be capable of doing. or whether or not it's because you don't want to drown with them. And it's what is loyalty to a certain point.
Yeah.
And Chris keeps trying to tell, like you said, Chris keeps trying to tell Gordy, look, don't worry about them as a section. I'll read it. I love the section here. It's mentioned a couple times, but the first time he mentioned it, he says, your friends drag you down, Gordy. Don't you know that? He pointed at Vern and Teddy, who were standing and waiting for us to catch up. They were laughing about something. In fact, Vern was just about busting a gut. Your friends do. They're like drowning guys that are holding onto your legs. You can't save them. You can only drown with them. It just goes back to you only help people who want to help themselves in the end. And, you've got to cut loose at a certain point. And that, I'm not speaking hyperbolic, but I think that when I was younger, when I read this, I was going through some bad times in my early 20s, kind of changed my life in a way. Yeah. Because you have to realize, okay, what am I doing here? It's the old saying, like, if you keep repeating the same mistake over and over again, isn't that insane? I think I probably butchered that saying, but it's something like that, right?
The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
A different result, exactly. And so this recurring motif of the drowning, and Mike, I think you mentioned it earlier, the drowning dream. And then at the very end, I think I might have it here somewhere, but he references it once again after he talks about how, friends come in and out of your life like busboys in a restaurant. Did you never notice that? When I think of that dream, the corpses under the water pulling implacably at my legs, it seems right. It should be that way. Some people drown, that's all. It's not fair, but it happens. Some people drown. Did you read that exact excerpt?
No, I didn't read it. No.
But it's true.
Nearby.
Yeah, it's very close to it. But it's very true. And it's just another instance of words from Chris, who was wise beyond his years.
Well, it's just like one of the sobering realizations you have as a kid, and you don't really have it as a kid. You usually have it as a teenager, and you usually have it years later. Because honestly, these things don't just happen so naturally. A lot of the times, it's something really bad happens. Like, for example, in this book, they talk about how Teddy and Vern start inviting different kids to the treehouse, and then finally they're like, we're not going to do this anymore. A lot of times in reality, it's a huge fight. A lot of times it's, they start hanging out with another person and that person makes fun of you. Or like, for example, for me, it was, we lived in a neighborhood that was very similar to the stuff in Castle Rock, like me and my brother. And the minute that we moved to a new house that was, cheaper and in a, poorer area, like a lot of kids didn't even want to hang out anymore. And like, that was like a harsh realization of knowing that, there's these dividing lines that we had that, that weren't there previously, and just little things that you see in hindsight. And maybe it's not so far as like, with Gordy being in his 40s or something like that, or 30s or 40s or whatever. I
think it's his 30s at this point.
Well, sometimes it's 2 years later. Sometimes it's like even a couple months later that you realize like, oh yeah, like it's over. Like, that's it. I don't need to hang out with these people anymore. Like, I don't, and a lot of the times though, it's really hard because you do feel this sort of like guilt, but then you also feel this sort of like isolation and loneliness. I mean, I think with this, it's the knowledge of knowing that you have to cut away because there are people that are actually weighing you down.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if that's such a universal feeling because I think it's a little less. I think it's a little more subtle than that in reality because I don't think a lot of people. I just think people just naturally do it. Mm-hmm. I don't think they think like, oh, these people are not going to be helpful for me in my growth. Yeah. I need to cut ties. I think it's just a subtle thing that happens a lot of the times.
Well, I think most of the time it is, but I think literally reading this as a younger person, that is what made me think like, oh, I really do need to make a change.
Yeah. But
it wasn't a natural thought. It was literally because I read it in a story. I was
well,
like,
I think
that's a good point.
Well, it's interesting because like, as a kid, especially as a, young boy, or like when so much of your life is spent on bikes and outdoors and, getting into trying to impress with pranks, that's a huge thing. But that only goes so far until you realize, oh, we can't keep doing this. Like, I can't do this when I'm 18. I can't do this when I'm 20. I can't do this when I'm 25. And like, I feel like there's those that keep doing it. And then those pranks become things that are a little deeper and crazier and criminal.
I think good or bad, there's just a comfort and familiarity, that's.
Well, yeah, that too, for sure.
And you have to, are you going to drown or not? That's the real question.
Hey, get busy living or get busy
drowning.
Get busy drowning.
Before we move on from Chris, there's also that one great like very adult thing where he's the one that he knows not to ask Gordy to show them the shuffling trick because he knows that that's kind of like taking something away that he had, that was one of the only things that his brother gave him. I'm like, a 12-year-old's having this thought, like it just speaks volumes about his history and his family and the alcoholism and everything that he's had to deal with. And it's just, yeah.
And I think that's a growth of King as a writer, because we joke about Danny in The Shining seeming way too wise beyond his years. But,
no joke.
but when
Which
you
is
give
interesting
Chris
that he
this
wrote this
backstory-
after that, though.
I know.
He wrote The Shining after this.
Exactly. But when you've got Chris and you give him so much background, you totally understand how he could be thinking like this as a 12-year-old as opposed to Danny talking like a 40-year-old as a 6-year-old.
Well, I think that's part of what makes him such a tragic figure is that he has all this self-awareness. So he understands what he has to do in his life as a very young person to make sure that he doesn't have the same life that all the other people in his family have had. So he starts making these painful decisions, and then when it gets really shitty, continues to make the painful decisions, even though he would rather quit, even though he would rather walk away. And he has to make up for all of the time he spent screwing around as a kid, and he just has to keep trying and trying and trying, and then does it, and then just gets stabbed in the neck for trying to be a good guy, right? And it's he was just trying to be a good guy. Death is not uncommon in fiction, but knowing that in spite of all of that effort and that it ultimately just ended up being a waste, it's incredibly tragic. It's just, you can tell from page 1 that this is a doomed figure, like too good for this earth. And then somehow he's not, and he has a happy ending and then fucking dies.
Yeah.
Like it's just the worst.
It could have been romanticized, and then it's not at all in the story.
And by the worst, I mean the best. It just it just hurts. It really hurts.
He has to die for this story to make that much more impact. Because if it was like
The losers die and the winners win, that wouldn't have rang very
No.
true. But I mean, so, you got Teddy and Vern dying. It's like, well, they were kind of doomed, right? But Chris made it out. He's not going to die. Nope. Even more unceremonious death. So
And Ace makes it.
yeah.
Ace,
isn't that
spoiler alert, we're going to be seeing a lot more of Ace in the future. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
With his fat ass beating up people and
I'm not
shit like
talking
that. No,
about
it's
I'll just say Ace does pop up in the future short story.
the image of him sitting
and
on
he,
the stool.
he plays
is all
a
I can think of.
major role in the future story. So
I just imagine like in Beavis and Butthead, when he sees his father and they're like talking about like the Motley Crue concerts and then their asses hanging out of their pants and stuff. Like the way he describes Ace at the end of that made me think like he grew up in, because I just think of like hunky Kiefer Sutherland and I'm just like, oh my God.
I think Kiefer Sutherland in Freeway.
Like
think of old now.
peak Sutherland in terms of sexiness. And then to see him go to the waist, because it's funny because it's like I was like, well, what does Kiefer Sutherland look like now? Oh no, he looks even better than he did.
He
he's
looks
like
like
more
he's
built.
the president of the United States.
he is the
Every Wednesday
president,
night
yes.
on ABC in a total garbage television
Is a bad show.
that I write about every week.
Oh God, because it's
rough.
Cash money. Cash money, homie. It's all worth it in the end. Anything else on Chris before we get down to the tragic character?
I'm going to
that
be
is
talking
Teddy?
about Chris a lot when we talk about who he's played by.
Yeah, we'll talk about that 4 hours from now when we start
little
talking about the
young
movie.
Henry Jones Jr.
But let's talk about Teddy, who I think is, of the 4 people, probably the third most drawn out of the 4. I'm assuming we could all agree on that.
Well, one of the things I wanted to ask is,
Yeah.
before we get into too many of the characters, because we already talked about the 2 golden children. Who do you most align with in this book?
Align with, as
Like,
in
if you
you feel you're a
while
part
you
of,
were
or are you
growing
siding
up,
with?
who do you think you were most like out of these kids in this book?
Gordy.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
I think Chris and Gordy, I think in different respects. I know I've always felt like I need to be the mediator in every single situation possible in my life. So I feel like Chris in that aspect. I feel like there was a lot of things that I decided not to do as a kid forever because I felt like if I did, I would be just as bad as other people in my family or whatever. So
I agree. I was always
I was definitely like that in that sense.
tried to avoid getting into trouble.
But I
and,
wasn't
yeah.
half as cool as Chris.
It's Gordy for me. But you looked at me, Mike. Who do you think I was going to say?
No, I didn't.
Ace?
Yeah, I thought you were going to say actually.
Chris Tessio.
I thought you were going to say the guy who is like sick balls.
Milo?
The Milo. No, I'm
Oh,
just joking.
I've got some things to say about that character after we talk about the kids.
Okay,
I think, I think that's something important to talk about. But
What about Yoda?
I mean, it would probably be Chris, but
Yeah.
it's my childhood was very like I don't have a going on bikes and walking down train tracks and looking at bugs, picking off leeches.
Looking at bugs.
I don't.
miss
I
looking
mean,
at
like
bugs.
this is a book about boys, and I didn't grow up as a boy, and which is not to say that you can't empathize with some of these characters. And I spent a lot of time taking care of my little brother as a kid, and like so I see myself as Chris in that respect. But,
Yeah. That's what I meant, like personality wise. Like
when Stephen King writes Now and Then, we'll talk about
now and then,
we'll
we
talk
God.
about like who
Let it
you
never
see
happen.
yourself.
you
in.
referenced
I
that
was just
last
talking
night.
about that last night.
Yeah, I see, like, because of my brother and just the house that we grew up in, I would say, like, personality wise, like maybe like when I was away from friends, more like Chris, but with friends, I was absolutely Vern. Like, I was the fat,
yeah.
I was like the fat like kid that was made fun of all the time, and you know, the one that was going to be in the back catching up and being like, guys, maybe we should not do, you know, maybe I don't really want to, like, complaining about literally every fucking decision, you know, be, oh, really? Like, ugh, we got to do that. Like, you know, and also kind of like in terms of the anger, like the frustration, like absolutely Teddy.
I can see that.
Like, I can't tell you, like the scene where he goes nuts about like how he wanted to, like, you know, the dodging and all this other stuff, like all the just the rambunctiousness of it is absolutely like how I was as a kid. Like, it made me ashamed reading it because like I actually do not have a lot of really great memories of a kid growing up. Like everyone always like, oh, I wish I could be a kid again. I would
Nope.
I would lose my fucking mind if I was a kid again.
I
Like,
am definitely the
hated
opposite. I still feel my best years were in high school. As
Really?
depressing as that is, I loved high school.
My-
but what I do want to say though
Not
is
until
I
I
do
moved to
feel
Chicago
like
do I ever
maybe
feel
I'm a little
like-
bit more of a Gordy Teddy thing, because my thing is I always want to try to be on the straight and narrow, right, and do the right thing and say, hey, everybody, let's settle down for a second. But when things keep going wrong, I remember in high school, I'll make a long story short. I was filming something for some big senior project, and this woman, she came in and she said I had to leave. I said, no, I've got permission to be here. And for my teacher, I've got permission to be here. And she said, no, you gotta go. And I remember exploding and like slamming my hand against the wall. Like I had a big deadline going on. And so in that regard, I'm absolutely Teddy being told I can't dodge a train.
Yeah, but
Like-
Chris is
like that's the thing.
But
Like,
Chris
that's
has
where I
his
feel like
moments too, though.
Chris has his moments too, but I feel like in terms of irrational, Teddy.
Speaking about Teddy, because that's the next character we're going to go and talk about. I have a little thing here. I think that Randall would absolutely be Teddy. On page
Randall?
444,
No. Colburn?
page 444, he says, when they're talking about Goochers, he says, nobody believes that crap about moons and Goochers, Teddy said impatiently. It's baby stuff, Vern.
Oh, that is
and
a
little
Randall
Randall
Colburn.
always
Yeah.
says he doesn't like baby stuff.
He
doesn't
always
like
talks about baby
stuff.
movies.
And also, true story, Randall has two deformed ears because his father pressed them on his.
No, if
Okay,
if
that's
we're
a
going to
lie.
name the other ones, I would absolutely say Caffrey is totally Gordy.
Oh yeah.
Like, to a T. If not Chris, a little bit with their...
No, Dan's a Gordy.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
a big marshmallow.
Yeah.
Dan is a total Gordy.
But I would say...
What about
I
Mel?
would say Rel. I think I actually do agree with Randall a little bit with the Teddy thing. But I also see more like a blend with like Teddy and Gordy a little bit.
What about Mel?
I see Chris.
Ooh,
Chris
Mel.
almost like,
Mel's over in Now and Then with me. We're both currently filling water balloons with vanilla pudding and putting them in our bras.
Wait, who are the adult versions of that? Demi Moore,
Rosie
O'Donnell, Rita
Melanie-
Wilson,
Rita
Wilson.
Wilson.
Is
Melanie Griffith.
Is Rosie McDonald in it?
Rosie McDonald. was in it?
Rosie O'Donnell.
Oh, Rosie
Rosie
O'Donnell.
O'Donnell.
Oh my God.
Anyway, that's our Now and Then talk. I have not seen Now and Then.
It's not bad.
Not bad.
It's not that it's not. It's no The Sandlot, but it's not bad.
What about The Sandlot? Too?
Oh no, let's not get Justin started on the Sandlot.
It's
His
fine.
rating
It's
for that movie
fine.
is bullshit.
It's okay.
I
6 out of 10.
remember being when I first
Stand
learned
By Me is a
about
better
Teddy.
movie.
I guess
Well,
when
obviously.
I was watching the film, but also in the book, it's just the fact that the love he still has for his father, even though he did this horrible thing to him, is just heartbreaking because you know deep down he knows it's out of his control because he's kind of gone, he's lost it.
I think it's
after
also
the war.
cool.
And and just I don't know how protective he is of his father, and like, you know, I mean, it's one of those situations where it's like, because it's his father, he could talk about how he's loony all day long, but as soon as someone else says it, it's not cool.
Well, it's interesting that like at the end of that Lardass story, the first thing he thinks of is, oh, he should go home and kill his father.
Yeah.
And like, wait, what? So the things that are going through that kid's head.
But the interesting thing to note about that, and they don't do it in the movie, is that when he says that, both Gordy and Chris exchange glances with each other, as if they know that, like, oh, here he goes again. Yeah. Like, you know.
Well, it's because it's always felt to me like it's certainly love to a certain extent, but more like this fervent hero worship that somehow means that it's okay that like he wasn't subject to this horrible incident of domestic violence that's changed him for his whole life. Because if his dad stormed the beach at Normandy, then anything else that happened is just, well, you know, he was in the war. So what does this matter? It's like his own little battle somehow. And it's like he's holding it behind this. We'll get there in word processor, but it's like he's holding it behind this wall, and every once in a while something just happens that's like a little blow to the wall, and the wall gets a little more fragile. And it's oh God, that kid needs a therapist. Like right now. Somebody please dive into this book like it's the never-ending story and get this child a therapist.
Call my name.
It's his only way to deal with it, you know, to make sense of it, and to... Yeah, and it kills me. And then, you know, just that sequence when Milo, the junkyard owner, starts making fun of his father, and he snaps. You know, he's always walking the razor's edge. You know, he's 1 second away from losing it about that, and yeah, it with everything. And that's, you know, like when he tries to face down the train, and Chris pulls him off, and then they have to like make peace immediately because he knows.
So much of that is like is suicidal, I think, too.
Look how well King puts him, or just look how well written King does with this. This is just one passage, and it sums him up so well. He's talking about Teddy, and this is on page 293 of the Signet Classics. Again, first edition for a first edition paperback. If you're able to get it,
scowling through the used bookstores.
He was the dumbest guy we hung around with, I guess, and he was crazy. He'd take the craziest chances you can imagine and get away with them. His big thing was what he called truck dodging. He'd run out in front of them on 196, and sometimes they'd miss him by bare inches. God knew how many heart attacks he'd cause, and he'd be laughing while the wind blast from the passing truck rippled his clothes. It scared us because his vision was so lousy, Coke bottle glasses or not. It seemed like only a matter of time before he misjudged one of those trucks. And you had to be careful what you dared with him, because Teddy would do anything on a dare. That's him there. You have everything there. You have his looks, you have his personality, and you just have his craziness. And
disregard for danger.
Absolutely. And it even like even just that one little passage is enough for him to be to foreshadow his fate later on too. Because, you know, he basically is responsible for killing 3 fucking people in the car when he has them all in there later on with he becomes the pisser, I think they call him or something.
Pisser of the year.
Yeah, pisser of the year. I think everyone knows a Teddy at some point in their life. And that's why I think this is a quintessential King character. Because I feel like every one of his stories has some sort of like, he's not the villain, you know, he's an anti-hero in a way. You know, I feel like this is almost like the quote unquote Larry Underwood in a way. Because he's got like, well, maybe not Larry. But
I don't know if he's even that. I think if we had spent more time with him, maybe he would become the Larry. He's in the same track that Larry was on.
Yeah.
But he never gets there.
No.
He never does
redeem
himself.
And that's such a...
But real.
Yeah.
It's just...
I mean, because every time I go home, and I'm from South Florida, and I got out, as they say. I get to Chicago, which is, we were talking about, if you want to talk about things when, in my greater days, it's when I first got here. Everything, I see people down there that are they're still at the same bars. They still are doing the same things. They're working on the same boats. They're doing, and that's fine because they seem happy in the sense, but you could tell like time, like they look much older. They look, you know, they're just there's an aura to them that's like, man, they have really lived something, and that's a Teddy. Like that's, I mean, I feel like this story wouldn't work without having a Teddy character. You just have to have that type of character, and he's even more important than. I mean, at that point, like Vern even feels more superfluous because he just feels like the Rocksteady to his Bebop. So
Well, I don't think that I think there's a reason why Vern's the last person we're going to talk about here.
yeah,
But I anything else to say about Teddy before we move on to Vern?
Well,
I mean,
I mean-
we're going to talk about these kids throughout the rest of this. Don't worry. But in terms of the focus, because with Vern, I actually kind of like the fact that he doesn't have anything really marked about him.
Well,
it wouldn't have rang
I would
as
say
true.
the craziest thing about Vern is that he's the tragic of the two because he just gets he just follows.
Well,
Yeah,
I think there's a distinction between them that's kind of interesting. And I think him being the follower is absolutely part of it. But there's just the circumstances required for Teddy to turn out as even a slightly well-adjusted adult are insane.
Yeah.
The things that would have to happen for him to be okay. It's just even trying to think like, man, if I was an adult, like a reasonable adult with money and time and mental stability in this town, and I encountered this kid and I could do anything possible to try to help him, what would I do? The things that would have to happen, starting first with just getting this kid to trust any adult ever. It's insane. So if there's a doomed figure, I mean, Chris is in a situation where everyone assumes he's going to be human garbage, and his whole life he's just trying to pull himself out of that. And that's not something that Teddy is really ever going to have a chance to do, because the one thing I'm, a pacifist, and I'm generally pretty concerned about giving people who are deeply troubled weapons in any capacity, whether it's in the armed forces or not. But you can imagine a world where a Teddy who could hear and see could end up in a situation where it's all about discipline and maybe come out okay.
Yeah.
And that's like the one outlet. And when you first read like, well, you'll never be able to get into the army if that happens, you're like, oh, no, that's exactly where he should go. Please, for the love of God.
Yeah, exactly.
Go to a situation where he just has to be that highly regimented, and then instantly realize that that's never going to happen because of what's happened to him, because of who he is physically, and because of this instant of violence. Whereas in the Rocksteady and Bebop comparison, right? Like when you latch
Radical.
on to somebody, when you find a best friend, it can be hard to let that person go, especially if you're kind of a pushover. Like if you're the kind of person that buries a jar of pennies, then forgets that you've buried the jar of pennies, then remembers you've buried the jar of pennies and can't find them, and then they're gone. They're not there, but you keep looking. When you're that kind of person, it can be pretty hard to escape the pull of somebody who's incredibly charismatic, which I think Teddy is, right? Like he's a charismatic figure, and there's a reason that these other kids are drawn to him too.
I mean, Vern
He's the
is
funny one.
Vern is the
Yeah.
cautionary tale for Gordy. It's
Yeah,
you're gonna if you want to be this blind follower, like literally, you're gonna end up like Vern.
And I think just in terms of an intellectual sense, Vern and Teddy have much more in common.
Yeah.
As we discussed throughout the whole thing. And then Chris and Gordy are definitely on the same wavelength when it comes to that. But yeah, Vern's death again is... Gordy was just, he might have even started the fire and didn't even know it. There's nothing... This isn't like Teddy going out knowing full well he's drunk off his ass, killing numerous people in the process. This is an issue of maybe Vern was at this house party, maybe drank too much, everybody's having a fun time. Unassuming Vern crashes at his friend's house, maybe kicks over a candle, and then that's it.
The thing that's crazy about Teddy and especially Vern is that they don't really have any sort of like emotional impact on Gordy. They're connected in a way that and there's a lot of discussion in this, like when they talk about like the campfire tales and like how these are discussions that seemed important until you find girls. Like that seems like these are the kids these are the friends that seem important until you find like girls, which I feel like when you start actually becoming interested in the other sex, that's a part of maturity that
definitely
reflects upon you being an adult. And I feel like these friends are like part of this sort of like spontaneity of like being a kid that like is part of like the same reason why you want to like open up a fire, like what is it? Oh my god, not a fire extinguisher, the fire hydrant. Why you want to crack open that, or why you want to break a window, like when you go by an abandoned house, or you just want to see what that chaos is going to be, and that's what these friends represent. And there's no future in it, which is why I feel like Chris is such an exception to the rule in that sense, because yes, he's really game for like going off and doing these kind of things, but there's a depth to him that you never get with Teddy and Vern, because there is no depth to that. Like, and there is in the sense that maybe if Gordy would have connected on a certain level with Teddy, but at the same time, there was no way. There's no way to do that because as they even mentioned in the book, and when Allison had mentioned previous, is that like you can't. He's so locked away at that point. Like it's just there's no way of connecting with him because you just have to. He's almost like. Oh God, this is kind of awful, like attributing it to it. He's almost like a rabid dog in the sense that like there is no real way to kind of corral at that point because
Especially in
they're so
1960.
like they're just so like gone. I mean, like even just the way who'd mentioned before about how like they knew how to handle Teddy, like to kind of corral him in a certain way, like to be able to stop him from doing something. One of you like had mentioned that when he was on the train and you're like, oh no, you have to.
Oh, that Chris knows how to
exactly
how to
like,
handle him,
but that
but
approach
only handle him.
Yeah, exactly.
Not help him.
And that's kind of emblematic of him as a character. It's just like there's no way to even crack him at that point. All you can do is just kind of put him back in his lane, I guess.
But I want to reiterate what Allison said about the only thing that can help him is the only thing that he can't do. And I know people like that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's someone very close to me that I think would have benefited from that kind of like the army or something like that. But like the way our society is, it really sucks. I think the people that need that stuff the most are the people that they don't want. And I mean, and that just across the board.
Well, yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of it, I mean, because if you look at like even Chris's situation, it's so similar to addicts in the sense that even when addicts, I mean, we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but like even when addicts want to try to recover, they never really can because everyone's just waiting for them to screw up again. And because there's already that sort of like wash over them that
It's a
like,
stigma.
It's a stigma that, and that's just a societal thing that like, even if you try and you try to do as much as you can, you get past that and years go by and years and years. And I've seen it with my mother. Like they're still just waiting because they know the history and they're just like, there's never a trust there. And with Chris, I mean, obviously it's more of a familial thing with the name of his the family name. But with Teddy, it's just, I feel it's like the surface level. Like, I mean, they have the history of his family, but they also have him in general. Like, there's a reservation. Chris is so much more reserved, where Teddy is just, I mean, he's the Joker, basically. I don't know, but digressing a lot on Teddy here.
Nice. The Joker.
Well, I don't know how much more we want to say about Vern, but I do want to say I think one of the things that's really brilliant about this book is you can tell from the beginning that he makes a point of saying it from the beginning that these kids are not going to be friends forever. No. But that does not mean that it's not three of the most important friendships he's ever had in his entire life. Yeah. Because when you're friends with people at that age, when you find like a little tribe, when you're 10, 11, 12, those are formative friendships, and it's built on a kind of loyalty that feels absolute, which is why I think at the climax of the book, when two of them take off running for reasons you cannot blame them for, I would run. Good Lord. Yeah. If I was looking at a dead body and a car full of terrifying almost adults pulled up, I would run the fuck away as fast as I possibly could. But when they run, that's a breakage, right? That's like something snaps, and that friendship is never going to be the same again. But that doesn't mean that everything that came before it wasn't incredibly valuable. It's a heartbreaker.
Yeah,
that's I like that a lot, and that kind of leads into just talking about friendship. It's the line that is also used at the very end of the movie. It's I never had any friends later on like the ones I had when I was 12. Jesus, did you? Which is funny because that line comes so early in the book. Yeah, it's like it's not even halfway through the story, and then it's at the end of the movie. But it's a powerful line. It perfectly encapsulates the relationship between the four of them. You know, looking back, I'm sure they're like, "How were we ever friends?" But you're 12 years old, and you're all in this together as a kid. You know, I don't know.
Can we talk about Ace?
Yeah, well, interesting. The Ace character really doesn't pop up until the very end of the story, right?
Yeah.
So,
but he's a presence.
We know
him
he's
and
like
his
the town
gang.
bully.
He's an archetype.
Yes.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. He's a king.
He's a bully. He's a king bully. Yeah. If there ever was one.
Who do you think would win, Ace or Henry Bowers?
Ace.
Yeah.
Of course, I know future.
Oh, you know different things.
I know some more of the tales of Ace Merrill. I'll say that much. So I think the Ace would beat up Henry Bowers.
Who do you think would win? Kiefer Sutherland as Ace or Kiefer Sutherland as David?
David.
Oh, you think so?
Absolutely. He's a vampire.
Yeah, that's true, I guess.
Oh, you mean, I was like, what are you talking about? Oh, you mean The Lost Boys.
The Lost Boys, which takes place a year later, and he looks exactly the same. The thing I love about
I
Ace,
can't believe that's a year later because Corey Feldman looks like he's about 5 years older.
Yeah.
Well, he's at that age, you know.
No, Corey Feldman looks pretty much the same.
I think he looks a lot older than he does in Stand By Me.
I don't think so.
Really?
I think River Phoenix is the one that grows up really fast.
I think you guys are all bearing the lead here, which is that Ace would definitely lose in a fight to Jack Bauer. So
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wait.
I think they'd all lose in a fight.
What
to
about the
Jack Bauer.
Designated Survivor? Who's going to win out? I think it's going to be the Designated Survivor because everybody else dies, apparently. So,
in the first episode, they're now pretending that it never happened. By the way,
Wait,
basically.
really?
Oh yeah. There's even a line that's like, "If this happens, it would be the worst terrorist attack since 9/11." I'm like, except for
did.
the
What-
one where they killed literally
Yeah,
everyone
the
in
cabinet?
government, and it's the cabinet, almost everyone in the House, almost everyone in the Senate, the entire
But
Supreme
wait,
Court.
isn't that the conceit of the show?
Yes, it's the literally
they're already
why it
bearing that?
Yeah, they're
This
just
is
like,
incredible.
What would be the worst terrorist attack since 9/11? I'm like,
Yeah.
pretty
Did
sure.
they
I heard
I
that.
just want to
like,
say something.
second
I
season-
was not.
Really weird.
I was not on the last episode of this podcast, but I was listening to it this morning, and you people were also talking about Designated Survivor. This is back-to-back weeks of Designated Survivor
Yeah.
talk.
Well,
This is
it's
pretty
because
incredible.
Well, it's an ad on
King's
ABC.
a fan, and he brings it up, so we got to bring it up.
I know. I just think it's funny that Designated
Well,
Survivor.
it's all canon.
It's really hitting our demo out there.
I will say Ace's like menacing quality to him again is just one of the reasons why I love Stephen King bullies. I used to have this real dickhead neighbor, a real anti-Semite, and I'm going to say his full name here. And
we're
he was a
getting real
piece
here.
of shit that used to hold me up by the neck, would pull knives on me when I would, because I was friends with his brother and his younger brother, and I would be at his house and he'd pull guns on me. I mean, fucking terrifying guy. And these are people that exist. Like, this is just a random neighbor that was down the street from a good family. Well, I guess a good family. His mother was a fucking nut bar also. But this is actually stuff that would happen. And like, so when you see like these like bullies that are in like Nickelodeon shows or in some other things, and it's just like,
They have
hey,
to the
I'll meet
extremes.
you after school, and I'll push you in your locker. No. That's what I love about King's villains, and that's why I love like Ace, because Ace is such a realistic person to me. Because I can imagine like in the day, like maybe today it's harder because it's in the age of like cell phones and all whatever. It's definitely more difficult to do this type of stuff, but back in the 50s, I can't even imagine what bullies were back then, especially if you're far out in the middle of nowhere and like there's already a dead body right there.
I mean, you
at
could get away with
thing.
anything.
That whole sequence when they go corner and there's because I imagine there's water behind them, just like in the movie, and like because they're at the boggy marsh, whatever. There's no escaping, and you have a guy that is absolutely dead set on going to kill this person. Like he doesn't care. I mean, like it's so unforgiving. Like I don't know. I get scared of Ace, even on the pages.
Well, he's
Like,
only in like 3 chapters, but he has such a presence, you know.
The aces of the world today, by the way, are online telling gay kids who are coming out to go
Yeah.
kill themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
And taking
Social media.
videos of women who are getting raped while they're passed out on the couch. Like these are and also doing the fucking raping. Like
Yeah.
these are the aces of the world. I agree that it's a little bit harder to imagine like, hey kid, come here, blah blah. Because that would also end up on the internet. But,
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a digital bully, which is even scarier.
Well, yeah,
because
as
you
you
can't
say,
get rid of them.
the internet and things like that have morphed these bullies into ultimately another thing more terrifying that we didn't know existed.
And I'm not even really talking about trolls, like specifically kids in high school going online and saying, kill yourself. You should kill yourself right now.
Yeah.
Kids
And then those
going
kids
onto the
killing
internet
themselves,
and
by the way.
saying that they're thinking about killing themselves, and other kids being like, yep, do it, I dare you. If you don't do it, you're a fucking pussy. Like the world is incredibly messed
Thank
up.
God this
guys.
stuff
Well,
wasn't
it's
around when
been
I was a
flipped on
kid
its
because I
head,
can't even
where-
imagine what that would
Thank
have been
God
like.
Ace didn't have the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been flipped
Hey.
on its head where it's like sticks and stones. It's like, no, like words are just as fucking hurtful. And
here's
if
some-
not more, can get to you, like especially kids.
Anyway, Ace Merrill's pretty scary, and
I think
I can't think of any other characters other than Oddball.
I could think of something
Eyeball.
else that's scary.
It's not Oddball.
Oh, it's Eyeball?
Yes, Eyeball Chambers.
I can think of
Oh.
something else that's scary.
Is
like
it the
cemetery?
cemetery?
Ooh.
Fine.
What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better. The person you put up there ain't the person that comes back. It may look like that person, but it ain't that person. Because whatever lives in the ground beyond that cemetery ain't human at all.
Well, the body's not necessarily a scary story per se, but there are scary moments.
Oh,
So let's open up that cemetery gate
You
and
know
head
what?
on in.
I'm not scared.
Oh.
I'm petrified.
Okay. All right.
Nailed it.
You did nail it.
Nailed it.
God. So who wants to go first here?
I
Now
will.
I'm thrown off.
I will.
Okay.
Let's talk about the millions of leeches. Leeches
God.
for them. Millions of leeches. Leeches for free.
Whoa, I
The
love that.
presidents of the United States of
Nailed
America.
it. That sequence gives me the willies in a super real way, and
Because of the willies involved.
Yes, because of the willies, and I do not have testicles. But the moment, oh my God, poor Gordy! The moment when he realizes that the king high bitch of the leeches is just hanging onto his balls is just it's so upsetting. It's so and then it pops and he gets his own blood on his hand.
Wait. So
Ugh.
did the thing pop because it had so much blood in it?
Yes.
Remember, because he tries to knock it off, but he can't.
That is like some fucking Slither shit.
It's
Yeah.
terrifying.
As somebody who's been accused of not having any balls, but does, I've got a little excerpt here. I was starting to relax a little, and that was when I looked down at myself and saw the granddaddy of them all clinging to my testicles. Its body swelled to 4 times its normal size. Its blackish gray skin had gone a bruised purplish red. That was when I began to lose control. Not outside, at least not in any big way, but inside where it counts. Very true. Oof.
Wait, the worst is it's the next part. He says, I brushed its slick, gluttonous body with the back of my hand. It held on. He couldn't get it off. Disgusting.
I kept kind of also imagining those like slug creatures from Stranger Things 2. Not to bring it back to Stranger Things 2, but yeah, you know.
It's exactly like that.
You know
almost.
what it made me think of when it says that it ruptured? It made me think of this.
Sounds like a champagne cork.
Yeah, it does sound
I
like
always think
Is
of
this
like
roadwork pound
I
cake?
always think of like ticks because like it's the same it's the same thing where like but with ticks it's even worse because you
have to burn 'em off.
You can tear them off but their heads will
Yeah.
stay stuck in you
Yeah.
because you have to like burn them and
Yeah.
they'll release it. But yeah, but the fact that leech wouldn't come off just by brushing it like even harder.
See,
and then you try brushing your balls like gently or roughly trying to get something off, like you're gonna hurt yourself regardless.
The thing that really grossed me out is the fact that he, like, as an obsessive compulsive, total hypochondriac, the fact that they had no other water source, so he couldn't really wash himself off or anything. He just had to put on his clothing after that. So he has all this like, leech juice on him
All
or
of
something
them,
like that.
yeah.
Fuck that.
That's a
Plus,
new.
he already pissed himself once. These
yeah.
are some stinky children.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
I have a less foul cemetery entry. It's just a little bit more cerebral and very scary, of the Bradbury variety.
Ray Bradbury?
Yeah, Ray Bradbury. This is on 381 again of the first edition paperback.
Is it the first edition, Mike?
This is a first edition. This is one of the creepy sections that has to deal with the Brower ghost. And Gordy writes, "We went another mile and then decided to camp for the night. There was still some daylight left, but nobody really wanted to use it. We were pooped from the scene at the dump and then from our scare on the train trestle, but it was more than that. We were in Harlow now, in the woods. Somewhere up ahead was a dead kid, probably mangled and covered with flies. Maggots, too, by this time. Nobody wanted to get too close to him with the night coming on. I had read somewhere, in Algernon Blackwood's story, I think, that a guy's ghost hangs out around his dead body until that body is given a decent Christian burial. And there was no way I wanted to wake up in the night and confront the glowing, disembodied ghost of Ray Brower, moaning and gibbering and floating among the dark and rustling pines. By stopping here, we figured there had to be at least 10 miles between us and him. And of course, all 4 of us knew there were no such thing as ghosts. But 10 miles seemed just about far enough in case what everyone knew was wrong." And that like imagery of like the ghost just like just talking to himself and just like this, I don't know. There's something about that, and the idea that they feel like 10 miles is enough to like be far away from that presence, because he acknowledges that they don't believe in ghosts, but as a kid, you would tell yourself that, but you would still be like, no, just in case. There's, even as an adult, I feel like in that situation, I would be
I think
the same.
we should get Gordy on for future Souls Midnight episode. It sounds like
I do too, yeah. Gordy LeChance, let's bring him in.
if you're there.
Yeah.
Anybody else have any little things? Obviously, the leech is the
Well,
big
like later on,
cemetery
the
moment.
screaming is eerie too, because
Yeah.
that part really eerie, like creeped me out, because obviously, I mean, it could have been a loon or who knows, but the way they describe it was like a woman like being hurt. So then, knowing that this is King's World and Castle Rock, and you have like dickheads like Ace Merrill, it made me wonder, like, was there some other thing that was actually happening in the woods that they just, they happen to be.
was.
The thing that always spooks me about that section is Gordon. This is like personal reaction. Is Gordy being freaked out that he didn't wake up? Like everybody else was awake, but he's the only one who wasn't.
Yeah,
That's my nightmare.
I loved how they did that. Because it's so that is really creepy to just wake up into that terror.
Yeah.
It's just that whole. I was loving it. I think I reread that sequence just because it was so cool, like how he visually put it together.
Yeah, that's good. I've got something here. Just it's a description of the body and the hail after the hailstorm.
Oh yeah.
He writes, "What are you laughing about?"
No, go for it.
Oh, he writes, his hail. God, I can't speak today. His eyes had gone wide and white, starry and pupilless, like the eyes that look out at you from Grecian statuary. It only took a second to understand what had happened, but understanding didn't lessen the horror. His eyes had filled up with round white hailstones. Now they were melting, and the water ran down his cheeks as if he were weeping for his own grotesque position, a Teddy prize fight to be fought over by two bunches of stupid hit kids. His clothes were also white with hail. He seemed to be lying in his own shroud. Ugh. It's also kind of a word processor of the god in a way, but I think that of all the descriptions of the body, there's something about that really just made it almost surreal in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, that's creepy. That stood out to me as well. I would say I don't have anything to bring to the table. You guys nailed all the ones that I had. It was just really strange. We all had the same, especially that ghost story, Mike. That stuck out to me hugely.
I won't read the excerpt, but when Gordy senses the oncoming train. Allison, you mentioned earlier about how people are pissing throughout the book, and that's one of the instances, obviously.
That's the sequence in the movie, which obviously we haven't talked about yet, but we'll talk about. I will definitely be a part of that discussion.
Sitting right there.
That's the part that is burned in my brain, is the train bridge.
Yeah, I gotta say, like, that is when I think of Stand by Me or even The Body, it is that train thing, because it's such a confounding situation. Like, what would you do? I mean, all you can do is run. But then it's like that dreamy sort of situation. You know, like when you have those quicksand style dreams where you just like you want to run but you can't. Like I feel like that's what would happen. Like if you're on the tracks, you just see this and be like,
"Oh, I guess that's it."
Yeah, right. Like even if it's
guys,
far away.
It was nice knowing you.
Take care. Well, even the imagery is powerful enough where on the Max Pocketbooks edition, it is of the train tracks. You know,
yeah.
So it's definitely the thing that resonates the most.
I mean, and you could tell like when we talk about the movie, that was like one of the sequences that like Reiner was like obsessed with nailing perfectly.
Yeah,
and there's a lot of great stories behind that. So I think it took a week for them to do it. But
well, are we leaving the cemetery?
I'm kind of done with the cemetery. We've seen Leslie Nielsen's grave, and it's maybe it's time to get going.
Of course, a reference to a past episode. Leslie Nielsen passed away.
Yeah, and
we visited his cemetery.
Yeah, back in like 2013.
Go on their Instagram page and look for our picture of the tombstone. Listen, I have no good segue here, so I'm just going to say it. I've been dying to get to this section, even though I'm leaving the cemetery, coincidentally enough. Let's get into word processor of the god.
And we're going to make a new rule. Whenever I'm in here, you hear me typing. Whether you don't hear me typing, what the fuck you hear me doing in here, when I'm in here, that means that I am working. That means don't come in. Now, do you think you can handle that?
Yeah.
Fine. Why don't you start right now and get the fuck out of here?
Allison, I see you looking at your Kindle.
I am.
Why don't you go first?
Well, there's so much, but I'm just going to pick one that I really appreciated the diction of on this reread. And it's about Teddy's total meltdown. I've already mentioned the great section where they talk about the dam bursting and him falling over, and this is from near that. Teddy's chest heaved and more sobs came out of it. He had pushed his hair away from his ears, and I could see the round brown plastic button of the hearing aid set in the middle of his right one. The shape of the hearing aid made more sense than the shape of his ear, if you get what I mean. Chris said calmly, "Talk is cheap." Teddy nodded, still not looking up. "And whatever's between you and your old man, talk can't change that." Teddy's head shook without definition, unsure if this was true. Someone had redefined his pain and redefined it in shockingly common terms. That would, loony, have to be examined fucking Section 8 later, in depth, on long sleepless nights. It's the little interjections of where you can imagine that Teddy is still just hearing those words over and over and over again in his head, even as Gordy is narrating his pain. It's such a potent force that it's still budding, and it's just gets me.
It's awful.
But great
Teddy's
writing.
life.
Wonderful writing.
But great writing. Great tragedy leads to great writing. Anything else, Allison, on your end?
That
or
I'll pick that one.
is that
That's my
the big
jam.
one you want to choose
I mean,
there?
there's whatever. Throw a dart at this book. Put all the pages
yeah,
on
no
the
joke.
wall. Throw a dart on the book, and you'll just find something really, really beautiful, even in Stud City.
Even in Stud City.
No, not really.
I'm a sucker for descriptions of the natural variety, as I said before. But without, I had the Bradbury sort of anecdote. And now this is very similar in the Bradbury field, but on page 383, Gordy says, King as Gordy, he writes, "We didn't talk about Ray Brower as the dark drew down, but I was thinking about him. There's something horrible and fascinating about the way dark comes to the woods. It's coming unsoftened by headlights or streetlights or house lights or neon. It comes with no mother's voices calling for their kids to leave off and come in now to herald it. If you're used to the town, the coming of the dark in the woods seems more like a natural disaster than a natural phenomenon. It rises like the Castle River rises in the spring. And as I thought about the body of Ray Brower in this light, or lack of it, what I felt was not queasiness or fear that he would suddenly appear before us, a green and gibbering banshee whose purpose was to drive us back the way we had come before we could disturb its peace, but a sudden and unexpected wash of pity that he should be so alone and so defenseless in the dark that was now coming over our side of the earth. If something wanted to eat on him, it would. His mother wasn't there to stop that from happening, and neither was his father, nor Jesus Christ in the company of all the saints. He was dead, and he was all alone, flung off the railroad tracks and into the ditch, and I realized that if I didn't stop thinking about it, I was going to cry."
I've got the first half of that. I excerpted that, the part about the Castle Rock rising in the spring. That whole entrance is beautiful.
It's just gorgeous.
Beautifully told. I'll go next year. This takes. I've got, no joke, like 15 things here.
Oh, me
so
too.
we'll kind of
some
burn
others.
through these a little bit. We'll kind of burn.
I got some other ones that I could pull from.
This is, I think, might be like the first thing in the book. Actually, it's the most important things are the hardest things to say, and you may make revelations that cost you dearly, only to have people look at you in a funny way, not understanding what you said at all, or why you thought it was so important that you almost cried while you were saying it. That's the worst, I think, when the secret stays locked within, not for want of a teller, but for want of an understanding ear. There's a lot of on writing stuff in here, I guess, and that's one of the instances I really love about King, kind of talking about the struggles of writing and for having all these things to say, but the fear or just the seeking out of somebody who actually wants to hear you and can empathize with you, I think, in a way. Let's see here. I've got some other stuff here, Mac. You got the second one here, Mac? Or
Yeah, sure. This is also, it was the first story I never showed to my mother and father. There was too much Denny in it, too much Castle Rock, and most of all, too much 1960. You always know the truth because when you cut yourself or someone else with it, there's always a bloody show. And I believe that's in reference to the...
what's we've all gone blank here.
The fucking story that we all didn't like.
Exactly. It's about
Chico,
the Chico kid.
Hey, I love Chico.
That city, baby. Mike.
I like an early passage. It's on page 338, first edition, and King writes, "But there was more to that summer than our trip across the river to look for Ray Brower, although that looms largest. Sounds of the Fleetwood singing Come Softly to Me, and Robin Luke singing Susie Darling, and little Anthony popping the vocal on I Ran All the Way Home. Were they all hits in the summer of 1960? Yes and no. Mostly yes. In the long purple evenings when rock and roll would from WLAM blurred into night baseball from WCOU, time shifted. I think it was all 1960, and the summer went on for a space of years, held magically intact in a web of sounds, the sweet hum of crickets, the machine gun roar of playing cards riffling against the spokes of some kid's bicycle as he pedaled home for a late supper of cold cuts and iced tea, the flat Texas voice of Buddy Knox singing, Come along and be my party doll, and I'll make love to you, and the baseball's announcer's voice, mingling with the song and with the smell of a freshly cut grass. Counts 3 and 2 now. Whitey Ford leans over, shakes off the sign. Now he's got it. Ford pauses, pitches. And there he goes. Williams goes all out one. Kiss it goodbye. Red Sox lead 3-1. Was Ted Williams still playing for the Red Sox in 1960? You bet your ass he was. 316 for my man Ted. I remember that very clearly. Baseball had become important to me in the last couple of years, ever since I'd had to face the knowledge that baseball players were as much flesh and blood as I was. That knowledge came from when Roy Campanella's car overturned and the papers screamed mortal news from the front pages. His career was done. He was going to sit in a wheelchair for the rest of his life. How that came back to me with the same sickening mortal thud when I sat down to this typewriter one morning 2 years ago, turned on the radio, and heard that Thurman Munson had died while trying to land his airplane. It's just Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, how many places does he go in that one passage?
I'll try to explain not Thurman Munson to the layman isn't like that well known of a baseball player, but this would be the equivalent of what if Chris Bryant died this fall?
Oh God.
He just won the MVP. It was that big a deal back in, I think it was 1980 when that happened.
And he didn't just win MVP
Incredible.
of being a great baseball player. He won MVP of
our hearts.
Of our hearts.
Many people's hearts.
Because he's a fucking hunk. And
He
Chris
is,
Bryant
but
is
that
an
was
American
a huge deal,
treasure.
so I can understand. I can't imagine the impact of that, being a baseball fan and being in that scenario. And by the way, Gordy's a huge Red Sox fan, so for him to feel that way about a Yankees fan truly shows how empathetic he is.
That's true.
As a character.
That's true.
And by the way, they also worry. They wonder if the Red Sox would stay out of the cellar that year later on in the book. And I'm pleased to announce that they did stay out of the cellar in 1960. They finished 65 and 89, but they were 32 games out of first place. Just want to make sure I got that across.
Thanks, Justin.
You're very welcome. This has been This Week in Baseball, once again on the Losers Club podcast. I've got something here. This perfectly encapsulates being 12 years old and having close friends, and it's like 3 lines. Here we go. And for just one moment, we looked in each other's eyes and saw some of the true things that made us friends. Then we looked away again and watched Teddy and Vern throwing water at each other, screaming and laughing and calling each other pussies. It's true. Again, we talked about this earlier. You're in this really strange human transition period where you don't know how to react to somebody else that you love and care for without, trying to put on this air of like masculinity. Like you don't want to let down your guard at that age. You want to still look like the tough person. With the jokes they make with each other, it's perfectly. I love this book. What can I tell you?
I also love the fact that we get a little preview of Stephen King's own writing in this book. Again, I've talked ad nauseum about the fact that I feel like this is his confession about his own personal ills of writing. But on page 360, he says, for Gordy, I always felt uncomfortable when the talk turned to my stories, although all of them seemed to like them, wanting to tell stories, even wanting to write them down. That was just peculiar enough to be sort of cool, like wanting to grow up to be a sewer inspector or a Grand Prix mechanic. Richie Jenner, a kid who had hung around with us until his family moved to Nebraska in 1959, was the first one to find out that I'd want to be a writer when I grew up, that I wanted to do that for my full-time job. We were up in my room, just fooling around, and he found a bunch of handwritten pages under the comic books in the carton in my closet. "What's this?" Richie asks. "Nothing," I say, and try to grab them back. Richie held the pages up out of reach, and I must admit that I didn't try very hard to get them back. I wanted him to read them, and at the same time I didn't. An uneasy mix of pride and shyness that has never changed in me very much when someone asks to look. The act of writing itself is done in secret, like masturbation. Oh, I have one friend who has done things like write stories in the display windows of bookstores and department stores. But this is a man who is nearly crazy with courage. The kind of man you'd like to have with you if you just happened to fall down with a heart attack in a city where no one knew you. For me, it always wants to be sex and always falls short. It's always that adolescent hand job in the bathroom with the door locked. That is like... Of course, he's going to write a great book about writing. Like that, he just knows the conventions of writing so well, and he knows how to express that. He knows how to articulate the problems of writing, and like, oh God, I think I reread that like 3 or 4 times because that summarizes my problems with writing. Also, like I fucking hate it, like, but I also love it. And then like there's situations where I don't want people to read it, but then I'm also like, you should do it. But
it's like you said earlier, not for want of a tongue, but for want of an understanding ear.
Yeah.
Some more great childhood stuff here. This is a really good time, Vern said simply. And he didn't just mean being off limits inside the dump or fudging our folks or going on a hike up the railroad tracks into Harlow. He meant those things, but it seems to me now that there was more and that we all knew it. Everything was there and around us. We knew exactly who we were, exactly where we were going. It was grand.
And that's what I was saying earlier with, the kids not knowing the significance of the moment, but knowing that a moment's happening and just not being able to articulate it.
It's great.
Yeah, I mean, I also really love the whole deer sequence.
Oh yeah, I've got that too.
And I didn't actually. I mean, it's a long one.
I've got a brief passage if you don't have anything written down.
I have. I mean, I've got. I mean, there's the stuff where he describes the whole night shifting into morning, which is great. But I also just love like the very last thought that he has, where he says, it's on page 390. He goes, "It was on the tip of my tongue to tell them about the deer, but I ended up not doing it. That was one thing I kept to myself. I've never spoken or written of it until just now, today. And I have to tell you that it seems a lesser thing written down, damn near inconsequential. But for me, it was the best part of that trip, the cleanest part. And it was a moment I found myself returning to, almost helplessly, when there was trouble in my life. My first day in the bush in Vietnam. And this fellow walked into the clearing when we were with his hand, where he was with his hand over his nose. And when he took his hand away, there was no nose because it had been shot off. The time the doctor told us our youngest son might be hydrocephalic, he turned out just to have an oversized head, thank God. The long, crazy weeks before my mother died, I would find my thoughts turning back to that morning, the scuffed suede of her ears, the white flash of her tail. But 800 million red Chinese don't give a shit, right? The most important things are the hardest to say, because words diminish them. It's hard to make strangers care about the good things in your life.
Yeah, I've got that.
God damn it, that's
Excellent.
a great line. Those two lines are like, that's like tattoo-worthy lines right there. And also like all the stuff you learn about Gordy just in that one passage, like that fact that he went to Vietnam, which is interesting. Like the fact that he went to Vietnam and he survived Vietnam. His mother is dead, so we know that. And then the fact that he's going to have these kids and he's going to deal with a lot of problems with his kids and the stuff with his wife. Like, I mean, that's just a really, I mean, it's a pretty meaty passage, but God damn, does King find great ways to just wedge in these details that feels so natural, And that's where the hindsight, I think, really plays into its strength in this story, where you can kind of like learn things about how the recent past informs his greater past, and I know it's just great. I love it.
It's a great book.
It is. It really is.
It really is. I've got a bunch more. I'm gonna read some other things here. This is when he talks about this trip he took early on in his career with his agent to New York. And this is shortly after the leeches section. I think he's looking down on the ground and he sees, I think, condoms and something like that. It reminds him of the leeches.
In the water.
Yeah. And he writes, he wishes he had said this. He writes, the only reason anyone writes stories is so they can understand the past and get ready for some future mortality. That's why all the verbs and stories have ed endings, even the ones that sell millions of paperbacks. The only two useful art forms are religion and stories. I was pretty drunk that night, as you may have guessed. That those are some of the ramblings of a drunk writer that I would say. I like that little add in there at the very end.
The one thing that really stuck with me, and it's kind of where I started just losing it emotionally, was when he starts talking about trying to find the bucket, and because I just like growing up, and I've always focused on like the weird mundanities of things. Like I don't remember a lot about certain classrooms, but I could remember like weird corners of the classroom that I would focus on and just think of just odd things like, oh, I wonder what those, somewhere right now that room still exists and that corner that I used to stare at is still there. And this whole section right here, it's on page 419. It's when he's talking about Brower and the fact that he was actually, the reason why he was out there and he got lost is because he was picking berries. And he talks about how he wants to find that bucket. Mm-hmm. And it's so inconsequential to everything, and it's ridiculous to think that would still be there. But he goes, stupid fantasy. An expedition looking for a 20-year-old blueberry bucket, which was probably cast deep into the woods or plowed under by a bulldozer, readying a half-acre plot for a tract house, or so deeply overgrown by weeds and brambles that it had become invisible. But I feel sure it is still there, somewhere along the old discontinued G, S, and WM line, and at times the urge to go and look is almost a frenzy. It usually comes early in the morning, when my wife is showering and the kids are watching Batman and Scooby-Doo on Channel 38 out of Boston, and I am feeling the most like the pre-adolescent Gordon LeChance that once strode the earth, walking and talking and occasionally crawling on his belly like a reptile. That boy was me, I think. And the thought which follows, chilling me like a dash of cold water, is, which boy do you mean? Oh, God, it's like...
Well, even when he's... During the story, he'll occasionally backtrack to his youth. When he's talking, he'd say things like, I know that probably sounded pussy, but this and that, because that's how he would have spoken as a kid.
Yeah.
And that whole thing. that just goes to Gordy's vivid imagination. And that's what Allison had kind of launched into talking about earlier with empathy and everything else. And I also don't trust anybody that doesn't have an imagination, let alone if you don't have empathy. Obviously, you're a monster. Yeah. But if you don't have any imagination, it's a tough go with me.
Sense of humor, imagination, and a love for Twin Peaks. That's all I need.
That's a SIL, S-I-L. Does not spell out die. That's a nice thing. But there's a section. Today. I know. It's like, well, the DIE was crazy. But he talks about, every now and then it turns around, bites the shit out of you with these long teeth, talking about imagination. Teeth that have been filed to points like the teeth of a cannibal. You see things you just do not see, things that keep you awake until first light. So, yeah, it's true when you can see too much sometimes and you wish you could just turn it off, but you can't.
I also I'm not going to read the passage, but I also really like the idea that he had to leave the house to go cry about Chris's death. Like he couldn't do it in front of his family.
Even his family. Yeah.
Like there's something about that. Like I've had a lot of situations where that's happened where I can't express. Yeah, I can't process it in front of people. I mean, like I had a close friend that died, like a couple years ago, and that definitely like that's the part. Like we just grew apart, and like the thing that really bothered me is that when we were at Sundance the first year, Justin and I and Dom, he like really wanted to reconnect with me, and I was so busy. And I just couldn't do it. I was like, I can't. And there'll be another time. We'll hang out. And then like the year later, he died of melanoma. And like I didn't have, and I just kept thinking about that chance to be able to see him. And I should have done it. And then it was because a lot of us just grew apart. And I just, he had his own life and I had mine. And I remember when I found out he died, I actually had to go into another room. It was in the middle of the night when I found out about it because I went into another room and I just tried to like not have like my wife hear it at all. Like I didn't want her to hear it. And it's weird. Like I don't know. And I'm not the type of person that's scared to like grieve and show emotion in front of people. But like sometimes I think with death, it's like processing like. Maybe it's just you need that space. You need that personal space. Although I think with this, it just harkens back probably to like the idea that he doesn't want to be seen as pussy. Maybe, but maybe that's still a feeling that he has.
I think it also comes down to the whole trouble, like the man of the household. Like you are you're the rock, and you can't be seen as being fragile. I think too.
Yeah,
that's a whole society thing we can get into too.
Yeah, and I almost feel like it's. Did you get like kind of like Brokeback vibes a little bit? That he kind of loved, like he might have loved Chris a little bit.
No, I don't. I just read it as a platonic love. I think we've talked about that in previous.
I think the Long Walk we did.
The Long Walk, I could see a little bit more in that one, but this one I do just think it was a platonic. And I think he just looked up to Chris a lot too.
Because he even says like no girl could ever get between us in like high school, and I hear that. I mean, there are definitely friends growing up where. I mean, even now, I wouldn't let any sort of relationship get between, the close friends. And I think I don't know, I did wonder like if there was some, I mean, I think in the movie for sure, there's like some more inferences there just because I think there's just the way that they interact is such a more, maybe it's just because I just watched Call Me By Your Name, but it just
maybe
seems
so.
Could be that.
Or you might have just watched That Pupil because we talked about that a lot in That Pupil about some of the overtones there.
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, even for between the novella and the movie, though, I always just saw it as a strong platonic friendship.
Yeah.
But maybe there's more there, but I didn't know. I'm not sure if that was King's or Reiner's intention.
Yeah.
Going forward with the movie.
Well, I have more. I don't think we need to go through them all, though. I think you just need to read. You go for it. Yeah.
I got one more I have to read.
Yeah.
This will be the last one, I guess, of this section. I love it so much. It's true. Speech destroys the functions of love, I think. It's a hell of a thing for a writer to say, I guess, but I believe it to be true. If you speak to tell a deer you mean it no harm, it glides away with a single flip of its tail. The word is the harm. Love isn't why these asshole poets like McEwen want you to think it is. Love has teeth, they bite. The wounds never close. No word, no combination of words can close those love bites. It's the other way around, that's the joke. If those wounds dry up, then words die with them. Take it from me. I've made my life from the words, and I know that it is so. Another King confession right there.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, that's a great one.
This has easily been the longest
word processor
of the God, and it's a novella. So that just speaks to the power of where King was when he started this as a younger man, and I guess his last drafts before different seasons came
Well,
out.
I mean,
it's incredible.
This
Beautiful.
is like some of Pete King.
Oh,
basically.
absolutely.
In terms of his dramatic writing, I mean,
yes, he has some really great dramatic stories to come. I don't know if I've ever mentioned on this program, but he wrote this novel called Lisey's Story.
Have
I talked about that?
I think that one of those lesser known books is 11/22/63.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that
I
one.
want to talk about that one also.
Yeah. We'll slip that on by.
You know what's
what though?
interesting
Speaking of 11/22/63, Mike, there's a section in that book between the two leads. It's a sexual section, and it pertains to something we like to call pound cake.
After all you've been taught, everyone isn't bad, Mama. Everything isn't a sin.
Come to your closet and pray. Ask to be forgiven.
He's a nice boy, Mom. You like him. You really like him, Mama.
Yeah, as I said earlier, I don't count the Stud City writing as King actually writing badly. So
Well, then I'm out because I got nothing.
Yeah, I really don't. I mean, I especially after that chapter ended, I went, oh no, this is actually him acknowledging this is poor writing, so I can't really bring it up.
Exactly.
However, in Pound Cake, we also mentioned disgusting bodily issues. So I do.
Oh,
have
there's
an
a lot of
excerpt
that.
from Lardass. I do have a little excerpt from that story.
Oh, but that's also not technically his story also.
No, but that's Gordon writing well.
Oh, okay.
That's the thing. So I'll count that.
Oh.
Again, it's from The Revenge of Lardass Hogan. It rolled out of his mouth in a huge blue and yellow glurt, warm and galley streaming. She screamed and backed away, pawing futilely at her hair, which was now covered with a mixture of crushed berries, baked beans, and partially digested frankfurters. That's a disgusting story. The whole thing is a pound cake. The whole
thing.
Vomiting for pages.
Hey,
is
what about
disgusting.
those? What about those dangly mossy penises that are on Chris and or on Vern and Teddy in the water?
It's
Sorry,
There's
you're
no
uncomfortable
need-
with that, Mike.
Well, there's just no need to mention it. Like, what was the point of mentioning these? Like, it's just like this.
I'm just driving home that they're
they're
young.
little kids. They're not like teenagers or. I think I don't mind that.
I don't mind it either.
mind
I just think it was also just like okay, whatever. But yeah, but this is,
they were with their small dicks. Like
I just didn't really. We didn't even have to mention it. It's like, oh wow, mossy, like two kids that are like, I look like Ted Danson in Creep Show,
Creep Show.
Creep Show.
What if
Ted
they
Danson
emerged from that after playing in the wire and it was just Ted Danson?
and just Ted Danson and Gail,
Gail,
Flatboy's wife in Dawn of the Dead.
Oh boy.
Not a wife. I think they're just
Galen
girlfriend,
Ross.
boyfriend.
Galen
Galen
Ross.
Ross.
Name. I could not
Love
correct
her.
it last time.
She was
Hey,
in. I used to get Galen Ross confused with the woman from Caddyshack and Tron.
is that the same actress?
No, it's not the same
Oh,
actress.
you know what? While we're on a tangent, something else I want to mention that's not I couldn't really put in a category is the fact that there are two other boys in this group
Yes, I
that are
love
not
that.
present.
Yeah.
And I would love to see King go back and talk about the twins,
They're
John
like-
and Marty Despain.
Yeah.
The two other of the regular gang that they do mention in this, but I don't know if they mention them in the film. But I love the fact that because this is how most people are. I mean, we have a tight knit group of people, but there's always people outlying that maybe aren't there for that holiday or aren't there for this.
I did
thing.
like that.
Mac,
And I really like that a lot.
Would you say they're floating around somewhere in King's Dominion?
I think they might be.
Maybe they are.
There's another world out there.
I know there is.
Mac, I know you've got a lot of notes. I know you've got your famous Room 237 arguable bullshit connections. I'm looking forward to reading this. But you go ahead. You started off.
But let's
however
start
you
with
want
the legit stuff here in
Yeah.
King's Dominion.
Oh, there's a bunch in this one.
Obviously, we've got. Obviously, it takes place in Castle Rock, Maine.
Yeah,
which
we'll go
is
in a circle.
stated right in the beginning. But the first thing that I noticed was on page 396 of the pocketbooks. It says the boys. They talk about the freight train that runs up to Derry and Brownsville, which
crazy.
means Derry, also is out there.
So that's the second mention of Derry. The first time was the Running Man, and now this.
And if you think
this
about
is way before
this
it.
was written way before it
Yeah.
and way before Running Man, right?
Remember, this is a
'Cause
fictional
this is-
town.
right.
This is written
But
during
again,
Salem's
who
Lot.
knows when this was finished? So it's hard to
Oh,
say.
right, when
but
he-
who
when he-
knows?
when
He
he
might have
put
written
that
this
in
back
there,
then.
yeah.
Hey, when we
totally.
get King on this podcast, I really want to talk to him about how much he laid out the land of Maine, like early on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When he decided to really start doing that, like,
Yeah.
did he decide to go into Castle Rock? Like after he wrote the Dead Zone, did he really think he was going to go back there?
I know.
That's incredible. Anyway,
Well, the dairy mention is like so indicative of that, though.
I agree.
Justin, did you have something?
I do. This is a little deeper. When he wrote Stud City, He said he was a Gordon LeChance halfway along in the process of losing the shine.
Ooh,
Oh,
interesting.
I didn't even pick up on that.
I picked up on where our old
Lucifer
Bannerman was. He wasn't a sheriff yet. He was a constable.
Constable, that's right. He's mentioned a couple times. It's kind
That's
of
right.
he's like this looming presence that's going to catch them. They keep mentioning Bannerman throughout the whole thing.
They also mentioned Bannerman's killer.
Yeah,
I'm
Matthew
gonna jump around here. This is like one of the biggest ones for me. Was like the characters actually like in it a lot. Is old Aunt Evie Chalmers from Cujo.
Gooch.
That's crazy.
And you know it's weird because they talk about her being old, all in this, which may be old to these kids maybe because they also talk about her being the oldest person in Cujo. So I'm like, how many years later does Cujo take place?
Probably 20 years after this.
Yeah. So I thought that was pretty cool, and that's on page 564 of the pocketbooks.
We mentioned that Cujo is mentioned. They talk about the dog at the dump, and they say Chopper was, at least until Joe Camber's dog Cujo went rabid 20 yeast later, the most feared and least seen dog in Castle Rock. I love that little nod.
Mike, you got another?
I thought that was interesting that well, there's that whole. I mean, they mentioned Jerusalem's Lot.
They do.
And you probably have it actually written down the reference, but that whole it seems to be that Gordy has a vision that's very similar to Ben Mears' vision.
He does, and
that
what's funny
was
about that is that's
downright
actually
chilling.
straight from a Stephen King memory. Stephen King also had a dream, I believe, that he saw a man hanging with the green face,
Which is so eerie.
and he used that in Salem's Lot, and he uses it once again here. Mac,
Which
do you have that?
you said he was writing this around Salem's Lot, so it makes sense that he would have this.
I don't have the exact thing, but yes, I did notice that, and I wrote that.
Here, let me-
I wrote that down.
I've got it
actually.
right here.
I got
Oh,
it's on 350.
Wait, the hanging man thing.
Yeah, I got it here. I got it.
Oh yeah, go for it.
It's
It's
right
like
here.
a sentence or whatever. They're talking about old horror comics and the fear of seeing something like that.
Yeah, it's on page 350. I'm just looking for it on this page real quick. Oh yeah, okay. I mean, sometimes I get nightmares like, you guys remember the time Danny Naughton left that pile of old funny books, the ones with the vampires and people getting cut up and all that shit? Jeez, crow. I'd wake up in the middle of the night dreaming about some guy hanging in a house with the face all green or something, like that. And it seems like there's something under the bed, and if a dangled hand over the side, the thing might, grab me. That's like,
He also
that
mentions
was Vern.
vampires in that same
Yeah,
line, and
which is crazy.
It's also from Salem's Lot, which again he was writing at the time.
But speaking of Salem's, isn't Suki's Tavern from? Is Suki's Tavern the one that's from One from the Road, or is that something different? Or is it Tookie?
Tookie's.
Oh, because they mentioned Suki's Tavern. I was like, God, why does that ring a bell?
Tookie is from.
Yeah, all right, never mind.
Yeah. Justin, do you have another?
Chris is consoling Teddy after, I guess, Milo is verbally assaulted him about his father. He says he don't know nothing but stuff he heard from those rum-dums down at the Mellow Tiger. And the Mellow Tiger, I don't think it's popped up yet, but it does pop up in a future book. I'm pretty sure it popped up earlier on, actually. Maybe in either briefly in the Dead Zone, possibly. Actually, is that the bar burns down in the Dead Zone? Is it the Mellow Tiger?
I think you gave me with the Yellow Tiger, the Laughing Tiger.
The Laughing Tiger. Okay, never mind. I just can't remember the name of the bar. I
just
can't
don't
remember.
I thought this was a little meta, actually. It's kind of a meta almost in. This is all King's Dominion. It has to be. It's on page 355. It's like right before the train thing.
I've got this exact thing.
And he goes, and although I've since written 7 books about people who can do such exotic things as read minds and precognite the future, that was when I had my first and last psychic flash. I'm sure that's what it was. How else to explain it? I squatted and made a fist around the rail on my left. It thrummed in my hand. It was thrumming so hard that it was like gripping a bundle of deadly metallic snakes.
It's just like him saying I wrote books, including the Dead Zone, including Carrie,
yeah,
Firestarter, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else? I've got a couple more.
Yeah, I've got a couple. The boys are talking about like being worried about the stuff they've done, and one of them says, "We're only 12 years old. They ain't gonna put us in Shawshank."
Yeah,
I like how that's
once
mentioned
again,
in the
connecting
same
Shawshank again
book.
with the stories in this collection.
I like that Gordy refers to his readers as gentle reader instead of constant.
Yeah, I noticed that too. That's cool. I'll save this mine for a lot. Anybody else have anything else before I give my final one?
Well, I don't want to stomp on you.
No, you definitely don't have it.
Okay, then this is just the blatant mention when they're talking about the made up names. for the towns with the Gretna. They mention they're rattling off towns in the
Yeah.
local
Yeah, Mike
area. And they
mentioned
say
Jerusalem's
Jerusalem's a
lot.
lot. Yeah. And then I don't know if Allison wanted us to put. Allison had to leave abruptly, unfortunately. But she did tell us that there was a correlation she found between Lardass eating the pie and it was very much like the Lawnmower Man's story.
Stuffing his face with grass, and Lardass is doing with the pie.
And I didn't think about that at all, so I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a legit one for sure. I mean, just like even the imagery of it is the way it's so surreal encapsulates that feeling pretty well. Yeah, I mean, it's weird because this is obviously based in a reality that's so separate from everything else in his stories, but yet the mention of Cujo, it is a part of his thing.
Yeah.
So when you think about the Dark Tower and the Stand and all this other stuff, I mean, maybe the Stand's different, as that kind of exists on its own thing, but on another world. But thinking of Salem's Lot, it's just weird to think that all these things happen in the same universe.
That's when he's really starting to tie it all. Speaking
of that again, another one, and I'm pretty positive this is it, but when Milo's jumping down Teddy's throat about his father, I'm pretty sure the nut house that he mentions is Terre Haute, which is also where Trash Can Man
Oh, interesting.
from the Stand.
Interesting. I don't remember that if it was Terre Haute though.
But I'm pretty sure it is. They changed the name in the movie, but I'm pretty sure.
So this is what year is this supposed to take place in? 1950?
Oh, I might be thinking of Apt Pupil. Maybe they mentioned it in Apt
1960.
Pupil.
Oh, 1960? Okay.
Yeah.
So
Anywho, that was my last King's Dominion.
So the events at Derry had already happened because that was 1958.
Yes, that's true.
So this is
a couple
2 years after
that.
the killings with Pennywise, which is technically all happened in the same in that world.
Yeah, some of them happen. I think the Stand, it gets confusing. We'll talk about the Dark Tower later, but I think the Stand is even in another.
Well, the Stand's in a
reality
separate thing
because everything happens.
And so is Carrie, but I guess Carrie's not connected to anything.
Something else here, though, that I forgot to write down, but it just came to me is Ray Brower, the body, is a boy from Chamberlain.
Yeah,
And Chamberlain, Maine, is Carrie.
Yeah, that was I saw that Chamberlain and I wanted to write it down and thinking, I wonder if that's another because there's so many towns that are mentioned in this book.
I know.
And I thought that was, I knew that felt really familiar. So I'm glad you brought that up, Dustin. Yeah.
Well, then that's got to be a link. I mean, what's interesting with Carrie, and it kind of drives me nuts, is that he's maintained that it's separate. Well, but there's so many ties, like the Blue Ribbon Laundry, like which is where Carrie, or Margaret White,
the Mangler, and other stuff. Yeah.
I just wish that you would acknowledge it's all in the same universe.
Well, some of it isn't. I mean, but there's some contradictions because Teddy Duchamp.
Yeah, he's in that book.
He's in Carrie, but
he works at the gas station.
But it's a different outcome for him, obviously.
But he would be that age though, because it takes place in the 70s.
I did some research in this, and there's the timestamps don't match up.
Really?
Like one of those one of them. I think Teddy dies.
He dies too
either
early,
way early, or something. There's something that doesn't match up. There's something that contradicts. Which King gets a lot better at later on, but I think he's still trying to frame it all right now.
Let me see if there's.
As a matter of fact, there's a character who is going to be in his newest book called The Outsider. And that character is the same name as one of the children, a major child from the Storm of the Century miniseries. But, and a reader actually pointed it out to us. I thought it was really cool. Somebody on Facebook pointed it out. But I'm 99.9% certain it's not the same character because there would have to be too much explanation going on. I don't want to spoil Storm of the Century. I'll say that much.
Yeah.
But I thought that was a pretty cool thing.
Speaking of Storm.
Oh, not yet. Were you trying to move on? Because I've got one more thing.
Go for it.
This is the ultimate Room 237. At one point, Vern shouts, "What's all this happy crappy? Is Vern the kid?"
Oh, I wrote that down.
Is Vern the kid? Did he not really die in that fire? Or maybe in another When and Where, he became the kid during the plague? I don't know.
Okay, so Dustin, that wasn't King's Dominion. Thank you very much. We're going into Room 237 now. Which
no, it's all part of it. It's all part of it.
Oh God, Mike, was yours a legit King?
Kind
Dominion,
of. Mine was more of like a slight criticism because the only thing I think is a little over the top is how it starts storming crazily right when they get to the body. It just seems a little too much for me. But I started wondering.
You're saying, yeah.
I'm starting to wonder if it's like. Maybe there's some sort of Ka at play with regards to Brower's body and everyone there. Think about it. Everything comes together in such a tight little nice package. Like the gang shows up right when they do. the fucking storm gets crazier and crazier as they get crazier and crazier with their what's going on. So I was like, maybe Ka is at play, and then they're part of some sort of path at that point.
The weather's unpredictable in the fall. Different seasons.
Well, speaking of Ka and the Dark Tower, if we move over to room 237.
What about room 237?
Room 237?
You're scared of room 237, ain't you?
No, I ain't.
Mr. Allen, what is in room 237?
Well, did anybody notice that Teddy's laugh is just like the Crimson King?
Yeah, all the E capitalized. Yeah.
And that laugh was very important, according to Rob Reiner, to capture.
So, if Vern's the kid, maybe Teddy's the Crimson King.
I would rather have Teddy be at the end of Dark Tower.
No, we don't get to too many spoilers here. Hold everything.
Yeah, well, let's see. I've got also page 422. 422 says he leaves. The Buick doesn't want to start. And this is from Stud City, but a Buick 8, folks.
Oh, yeah. Preceded it by 20 years almost, because he wrote this in the early 70s.
Maybe Gordy's also Stephen King, which we've already kind of alluded to.
Oh, definitely.
Also, page 567, Chris's mother also drives a Buick. Page 422, Johnny could have steady work at Gates Mills and Weaving, but only on The Night Shift. Another reference to the Night Shift book, as well as another we'll mention here is right after they're talking about all the little short stories and things that scare them and go bump in the night. It says we all began to nod. We all knew about the Night Shift, and that I actually thought was interesting, because I think that they're actually talking about the shift when the night happens, and not the night shift, like as in like a job or the work, like when they're talking about.
No, that's why it's room 237, because it makes it's such a reach.
And let's see, I've got one more here. This is the best one, page 393, where they dub Vern as Penny Tessio. So we have another Pennywise, Nickel Stupid, and Penny Tessio. Maybe Vern is also it. Thanks, folks. That's room 237. I'll be here all week.
I'm glad we were able to pad out this episode. That wasn't going to be long enough. Does anybody else have anything else for King's Dominion before we move on?
I want to say that
this whole book is one big King's Dominion, essentially.
It really is. It really is. It's a gateway.
Okay, well, before we get to the movie, let's give our final thoughts.
Dad, can we go now?
You ready?
Yeah, we've been ready for an hour.
Okay, I'll be right there.
You said that a half hour ago. Yeah, my dad's weird. He gets like that when he's writing.
Allison, kick it off.
Well, I love a good coming-of-age story, and I think this is a great one. It's incredibly compassionate, but really honest, which is a hard thing to capture, right? Like, there are a lot of really hard-hitting looks at being a kid or an adolescent. I just watched Raw. Have you guys seen Raw?
Love Raw.
Yeah.
Raw.
Great coming-of-age story. Nowhere near as compassionate as this, right?
No.
Like, there's not a ton of
Unforgiving.
empathy there. Yeah.
There's a great scene where Chris starts chomping onto Teddy.
Yeah.
Oh, God.
It's the body.
Yeah.
It is.
And it's delicious.
They all eat Ray Brower.
But I think that this sort of balances the sunnier looks at childhood and stories that are much more grave in a really lovely way. The characters are incredibly well drawn. Obviously, the prose is beautiful because we just talked about it for so long. So yeah, I love it. I think probably 4.5 bright red Pennywise clown noses, maybe 4, but I'm feeling pretty generous towards Stud City at the moment, which is what dings it for me.
Yeah, same. I mean, I had kind of similar issues at first with the whole Chico thing, and I think that just talking about it a little bit more here definitely helped ease some of those concerns. Because at first I was kind of floating over a 4. And then you get to that ending and it's impossible to give this anything less than 4.5. I just really, for me, I think I have to what's so impacting about this story is that it feels so honest, and it feels like it comes from a place that could only have been from some sort of experience. And I'm not saying that all this stuff happened to King. Obviously, it didn't. Although he has gone on record and talked about how like the leech thing actually did happen to him. But the specificity of these feelings and the earnesty of his thoughts of like whether it's like Gordy's fears of being a writer or the bonds that he had with Chris and the people that he had to lose to become who he is, and the you know, just those concepts of friendship and family and it just the interpersonality of it is just so heart-wrenching that it comes off as more realistic and more affecting than literally almost anything he's ever written. And that's saying a lot because he's written a lot of affecting prose in the past. And so, I mean, I was shaking and crying at the end of this story. And it's such powerful writing, and it's stuff that I mean, granted, a lot of it's informed by the movie because I grew up loving this and worshiping this movie. And I've read The Body before. I've read it when I was in elementary school, and it was actually the only section I read because I was like, I don't want to read these other stories, and I just like read that. And you know, it didn't affect me as much. But as a 33-year-old who's somewhat close to the same age as what Gordy is when he's writing this, like it hits me in such a different way now that I spent like a good hour yesterday just rereading passages and just crying, and like it's just that doesn't happen very often, and so for me it's just I have to. There are a lot of little things that I'm not a huge fan of in this. Like I don't think the storm is really that necessary. I think it gets a little too on the nose metaphorically, and again I think the Chico thing could probably lose about 4 pages. Having said that, these are so like nominal compared to everything else that's wedged in this story. So I'm going with 5. I'm going with 5 bright red Pennywise clown noses that I'm putting on Rob Reiner's forehead and in his nose and on his cheek. And he's just going to sit there and smile and tell us stories about how he made the bucket list. Anyway, Mac.
We've got to find Rob Reiner in clown makeup.
Oh my God.
To really remember the song.
Right?
Mac.
I really like this story. And this is all leading up to me saying it's a 3.5 noser for me. I also think it's very possible it's because I didn't read this when I was a kid, and I'm coming at it strictly from as an adult. I have a slightly and I feel a little bit differently about the movie a little bit, but I really liked it. But you know, it's weird. You know, I was crying at the end of Shawshank. This just didn't emotionally move me as much as I thought it was going to. And I love all the insights that we've talked about today. And like, I mean, I absolutely pulled a lot from this story. But for me, that's more in those brief instances that they talk about certain things about the realities of the world. But the story as a whole, and just them going to check out the body and like the slice of lifeness of it, like I enjoyed, but it wasn't as compelling as some of King's other work. And if I'm putting this up against his other works and things that I've given 5, like The Dead Zone, and I can't. For me, it's a 3.5. It's good. It's good. It's a solid, good story, and with moments of greatness for me.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna give it 3.5. Bright red Pennywise clown noses.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna give it actually 4.5. Bright red Pennywise clown noses. Spoiler alert! I think this is the best novella in the Different Seasons collection. It goes back to really everything everybody has said. The ding I would have against it is the Stud City inclusion. Again, I understand what King was going for, but I don't know why it was in there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I agree.
You know?
I mean,
I
agree in that sense. My whole thing is because I feel like I do still have to justify this 5 because that is a big rating. My thing is that it's just so.
I hear what you're saying. In comparison to the strengths of the rest, which is why I'm giving it a 4.5, which I think is probably if you take into account all the short story collections we've read,
because I think
and the novellas, this is probably like my second or third highest rated one.
Because I think Shawshank is a tighter story. Yeah. Like I think it's a better written story.
I actually have this a little higher novella-wise than Shawshank.
But my only reasoning for putting it higher than Shawshank would be because the thoughts and the stuff, the reasoning that he puts in this is so signature to just him. Like I can't imagine any other writer being able to, kind of have those kind of perspectives. And it's really like it's really like the substance that actually carries this, rather than the actual execution of
itself.
it. Yeah,
no, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, and
There's no need to defend.
you don't need to defend. It's like
it's
giving
an
it a
opinion,
2.
you know.
But because there's
I don't
things,
like giving 5s all the time.
Yeah, but there are things that I'll say, you know what, that doesn't work, that doesn't work. But like you said, Mike, there's certain things where I'm like, well, no, what? Best example is for me like the ending of Psycho with like looking back now, like why is that there? But then you think, well, in 1960, people did need an explanation as to what was going on with this person. But at the end of the day, like the strengths of that movie far outshine.
Oh, totally.
The last 5 minutes, where it's like it's still a 5-star for me. So that's what I'm trying to say. But it's a 4.5 out of 5. I still think overall this is still is some of his best prose, if not his best dramatic prose. I've got some notes here about it. It's just it perfectly captures child Frenchman interaction. Allison touched on that earlier too, but more importantly to me, it really, really is not afraid to talk about the harsh realities of growing up and growing out of relationships. We talked about this before we were recording, how this was one of those instances when I was a kid and I read it and thinking, or actually, well, I guess I saw the movie first and then I read the story and thinking, oh, you mean the friends I've got right now at the age of 12, 13, I'm actually going to stop being friends with them? And not as an adult, but like maybe within the next year or two. It just, things just kind of start getting you thinking about adulthood and the inevitability of growing out and growing up and out of relationships. It's
basically the title of Jerry Maguire's manuscript, The Things We Think But Do Not Say.
And that movie, of course, stars
Jerry O'Connell.
Jerry O'Connell
as Cush.
That's all we're saying. That's all we're saying.
All we're saying.
That's all we're saying. But yeah, I give it the old 4.5 bright red Pennywise clown.
I think that averages out to 4.25.
Let me do the quick math in my old head here.
So you got 3.5,
15,
5, 4.5,
4.4. It's like a 4.25.
4.25. Yeah,
it's a high. That's definitely the highest rank we've had so far for the novellas. All right, well, that's the novella collection. That's a novella of the body. We've made a lot of room. And to quote Andy in Shawshank, if you're with us so far, I hope you can stay with us a little further. That was more of a paraphrase, but you understand what I'm trying to say here.
But
let's talk about Rob Reiner's Stand By Me, the adaptation of the body.
Don't worry, Mom. I know all about cannibalism. I saw it on TV.
See? It's okay. You saw it on the television.
Well, before we get into our thoughts on the actual film itself, let's hear a little bit about the background of how this film was made. Mike, I know you have some research on that. What do you got? What do you got?
I got some good stuff. Originally, Adrian Lin was set to direct this movie.
Wait, the director of 9.5 Weeks?
Yes, and she wasn't able to. Adrian he wasn't able to do it because 9.5 Weeks ran over schedule.
Let me just say something. Adrian Lin is a terrific director of kind of these seductive films. He also did Fatal Attraction. He later did, what the hell's the name of that movie? With Richard Gere and Diane Lane. Unfaithful.
Oh, yeah.
He kind of these psychosexual films. So I've been very interested to see what he would have done about the story of 4 12-year-olds in Oregon, as we find out later on. But anyway, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
So, yeah, I mean, obviously, Adrian Lin wasn't able to direct this. And it went to Rob Reiner, who at that point had really only done This Is Spinal Tap and The Sure Thing.
With John Cusack.
Yeah. Which is interesting now because, and another what if of this film was that instead of Richard Dreyfuss, he actually was thinking about getting Michael McKean, who he had worked with, in This Is Spinal Tap, which would have been interesting.
I could have seen that. I could have seen that. Yeah.
So, but the thing is, because he had a lot of trouble actually casting who the writer was going to be. He also wanted David Dukes. Which I don't know how that's.
Wait, you talking about the former KKK member who became a member of the Senate? Oh, it's David Duke. I'm sorry.
That's David Duke,
not plural.
Not that one. But no, he worked really hard to find the exact right kids for these roles. I mean, obviously, which makes sense because the kids are what make this movie. It's just very similar to like this past year's It.
Yeah.
I mean, if you don't get the right kids, this isn't going to work. And And based on all the oral histories that came out, because again, the film celebrated its 30th anniversary last year, they all believe that they were. I mean, if you listen to all of the kids, I mean, with the exception of the late River Phoenix, they all were very similar to their roles. I mean, Corey Feldman has gone on record stating that he feels Teddy DeChamp was easily the closest approximation to who he was at that time.
Absolutely.
Will Wheaton grew up to be a writer.
Well, I was going to say before we move on, when we were talking about Teddy and just like seeing this guy's just, like how does he get out of this like situation that's going to propel him into all of this craziness the rest of his life. And I was just sitting there biting my tongue because I just feel like it's kind of like Corey Feldman. He had such a specific crazy childhood as a child actor, or most child actors, I feel, and like in order to help them, you'd almost have to pull them out of that completely. And Teddy was never able to do that, and neither was Corey, because he just got sucked into the child actor syndrome.
He was stuff from the age as a baby. He was doing commercials, and he has an awful relationship with his parents. So that goes into the whole other thing. But I guess you were coming from in terms of looking back. Who would have thought that the trajectory would have been somewhat similar in terms of Doomed? Sorry out there, Corey Feldman, but anyway.
No, I mean, and honestly, like even Jerry O'Connell, and this was his first role. He was. He's talked about how this was the greatest summer of his entire life. I mean, because he was kind of the God man out. Like he had never really done movies before. All the other actors had. So that's kind of very emblematic of Vern in a way, because Vern's kind of like left behind and always kind of following and trying to learn and figure things out. So, Reiner was really close with the kids too. I mean, like, and I don't mean that in a weird way, but no, they spent like 2 weeks together, like holed up in like hotel rooms, like doing games and bonding. And, you read a lot of interviews, and they like celebrated 4th of July together. I mean, it really was like a summer camp. Right. So that's why by the time they started filming, they had done a lot of like improv tricks together. They just really bonded in a way that said that when they actually did start rolling, they were pretty much friends. Like they were close together. Interesting. Other what ifs is Corey Feldman's friend Corey Haim almost got the role of Chris. But he turned it down to star in Lucas and another.
I could have seen him doing Gordy at that age, but I could not have seen Corey Haim doing Chris at that age.
I couldn't either.
Couldn't do it.
Although the other roles, other people that were considered for Gordy, and this is like absolutely can see, is Sean Astin or Stephen Dorff. Couldn't see Stephen Dorff. Or Ethan Hawke.
I could see Stephen Dorff as Chris at the time.
Absolutely, because he's very similar.
It would have been 2 Goonies if Sean Astin was also in it.
Yeah. Well, it was the same year as Goonies. That's what I'm saying. So it was 86.
And you said Ethan Hawke at the end there?
I think Goonies was like 85.
It was 85. Oh, I guess it was 85.
That's what I'm saying. It was too weird.
Did you say Ethan Hawke?
Yeah, and I could easily see
Gordy.
Ethan Hawke as Gordy.
I can see him,
definitely.
Especially after, like the Explorers and all that.
Yeah.
I can see him doing that.
One of the reasons why, this is an unconfirmed explanation, but apparently the setting was changed from Maine to Oregon because one of the screenwriters misunderstood the novella's reference to Portland being nearby. I don't know how real that is, but
Portland, Oregon.
That threw me off when I was watching the movie that they mentioned Portland, and I thought, because the radio station comes on, they mentioned Portland, and I thought, maybe they're just listening to a station that's based out of Portland because they.
Well, no, there is a Portland, Maine, though.
Yeah. Okay, then I
That's
don't know
why
what we're talking
confused.
about here. Then
because
maybe it wasn't.
They thought it was Portland, Oregon. They were talking about, not Portland, Maine. I guess that's the confusion. That's why they made it.
But I guess I didn't pick up from the movie outside of that it was supposed to take place in Portland.
Oh no! It takes place in Castle Rock, Oregon. But you're saying that the reader thought that in the book they were talking about
the screen.
Portland,
Yeah, they're saying
Maine,
that the screenwriter thought it was actually Portland, Oregon.
Yes,
because it's filmed in like Eugene, Oregon, basically. Yeah. But
okay.
Yeah, and then also what was interesting is that it wasn't called The Body because they all thought, according to screenwriter Reynold Gideon, the title sounded like either a sex film, a bodybuilding film, or another Stephen King horror film. And I think they were really trying to distance themselves from Stephen King in this because at that time, it was like very, it was not schlocky horror movies, but there were a lot of horror movies.
We talked about that in our Shawshank episode. Even Shawshank, there's no mention of Stephen King in the credits. There's nothing in the promotional material until after the movie. It says based on the novella Rita Hayworth. It's the same thing here. He gets mentioned in the credits at the very end, based on the novella The Body by Stephen King.
And Rob Reiner came up with the idea for Stand By Me, obviously after the Benny King song, which we were discussing previously, but the Stand By Me is in The Stand. It's right before book three. So, and knowing that Rob Reiner is a huge Stephen King fan, I wonder if he subconsciously brought it for that. Rob, we got to get you on the podcast and we'll find out. But that apparently was like the least, it was the least unpopular option. So they went with it. And
I love it.
I love it. It's
perfect.
It's perfect.
If it's you're reminded of the late 50s in terms of the song.
Yeah.
And then just the theme of it is about the friendship. It's perfect. It's a perfect. I have no problem with that retitle at all.
Yeah. Some really cool trivia based on the movie. I mean, there's just so much about this movie that you can talk about. That was on here that I've pulled some interesting trivia. Actually, it wasn't even supposed to be Benny King. Was Michael Jackson was originally asked to do a cover, which would have been ridiculous.
He's the king of pop. Incredible, but no, it would not fit in. It would not have made sense.
I love Michael Jackson, but oh my God, that would have taken me right out of the movie.
Yeah.
Apparently, after Rob Reiner screened the movie, Stephen King, he was visibly shaking and wasn't speaking, and he actually even left the room. And when he came back, Reiner was told that it was the best adaptation of his own work. I mean, he said, King had quoted, "That's the best film ever made out of anything I've written, which isn't saying much, but you've really captured my story. It is autobiographical."
It's way up there for me.
Yeah, I mean, it's number one for us on Consequence of Sound. But interesting enough, and you're going to hear this in one of our forthcoming interviews with two of the stars. Kiefer Sutherland was kind of a bully on set, and he got really into the character.
I've only heard things about that from Kiefer Sutherland on set, so I'm not that surprised.
Yeah. While filming the scene in which Ace takes Gordy's Yankees cap, Kiefer's first instinct was to put it on rather than hand it to Eyeball Chambers, but Reiner told Sutherland not to put on the hat as a way of showing Ace was stealing it to be cruel to Gordy, not just because the hat itself was important at all to Ace. And they both confirmed, both Will Wheaton and Kiefer Sutherland confirmed on the DVD that basically what happens is that Gordy never gets a hat back because basically Ace just throws it away, like somewhere down the road.
Let's talk about
which is awful.
Let's talk about that change a little bit because obviously in the movie that gang is introduced.
Yeah, we should probably talk about them. Let's just talk about the movie as a whole.
Well, no, but you should definitely go back. I'm saying just a brief intercut. But let's talk about it real briefly though. So how do we feel about the gang being introduced earlier on in the movie? I actually like it.
I do
I
too.
think it gives the character of Ace that much more weight and that much more of a threat that when we see him at the end, we know that this guy is really awful. Because at one point he says, if either of you really had $2,000, I'd kill you. And normally if you heard a kid say that, you'd think, really funny. No, but the look in his eyes, you're like, oh, this guy's fucked up.
Ace is so menacing throughout this whole movie. Yeah. Like, even when he's hanging out with his gang, and like, he's like, what is it? I think it's Vern's brother maybe is just explaining his reasonings for not wanting to go. He's like, yeah, you've expedited your case. Now get in the fucking car or whatever. It's just like, he's so like, he's just like, what an asshole,
It's awful.
Yeah, I liked seeing him earlier when they steal the cap and everything, because it sets up that menace. But I think that scene does it enough. Where I don't know. I was kind of torn because I wasn't like thrilled that we kept going back to them. Because for me, I just felt like there was a lot of stuff from the book that was left out because we were going back to these guys, and I just didn't think that they were characters that really need to be fleshed out that much at all.
I don't know if there was that. I didn't feel like there was that much left out.
I think there's a lot of things that they kind of changed or tweaked here and there.
Well, you see Ace doing a lot more things. Like they're playing pool, they're hanging out.
No, that's what I'm saying. I said that you followed them throughout the book, but I'm saying I don't think that was at the expense of removing any material from the novella, though.
I think that. I don't know. I felt like they did.
Yeah, I can't think of any instances where the only thing they really changed, I felt. Well, there's some changes. Do we talk about some of the changes? I guess while we're doing this. I really like the change from Gordy having that nightmare of his brother coming out of the closet. I love the change to him being at the funeral and the nightmare is his father saying it should have been you.
Yeah.
I think that is much more effective than what happens in the. It's kind of creepy in the novella, but that's a strong change. I like that.
Well, what's interesting too is that like Reiner does this thing where instead of having rose tinted lenses, the whole movie is kind of glossed over in these blue skies that feel so dreamy. Like the entire, like everything's shiny, perfect. It's like Janis Kaminski. Maybe you should watch this movie. This is how you do very shiny cinematography, but. So like when they go into that sequence with the funeral, it's even brighter blue or like even a darker. It's like a darker tinge of a blue, And so the whole movie feels very dreamy to me. Like it does feel like we are in Dreyfuss's head, like or the writer's head, basically. And I love it for that. You know, it for me, it's as if Reiner understood what King was putting to pages, you know, or putting to paper with his aesthetic. Like he nailed the King aesthetic with this. And I feel like whenever I think of anything to do with King, it's this look. It's that kind of natural, hazy, dreamy sort of presence where the town is quiet and very settled but very lived in too. I mean, this is a world that what I love about this town is that they all shot in location and it wasn't like sets and stuff. Like this was like actual small towns, and a lot of these places still exist. In fact, like the town of Eugene, Oregon. I think it's Eugene. Let me
Eugene, Oregon's still out there.
Well,
that's like I mentioned. Like, I think I've heard of Eugene, Oregon. Yeah.
Well, they shot in a bunch of different places all across Oregon. One of them was Brownsville, and they still have a Stand By Me Day to this day. Like they in Brownsville, Oregon, they have a Stand By Me Day that's fixated to July 23rd. And they even put like a penny on the street where Vern found one. They have an advertising mural that's painted for the production, but all those places like the general store, their houses.
I gotta get to Oregon.
I know. We gotta go.
It's supposed to be beautiful up there. Maybe I'll fly out there in February. I'm trying to think of where I want to go next year. Side note.
Speaking of the changes, I think the one change that bothered me the most throughout the whole film was just the stuff with Gordy, just changing his relationship with his brother. I don't know. I just felt like that was such a important part of the book. That they kind of romanticized in the movie, and I think it works in the movie. I think that because they kind of have each kid playing an archetype, whereas in the book, I feel like they're all kind of like that rowdy kid. Even Gordy. I mean, Gordy when he yells and gets in the fight with the store owner, or you know, he's right there with them when they're yelling at Milo, and you know, he's doing all that stuff. He stands up for himself a lot more. Even at the end, you know, he's the one that stands up and not the one that pulls the gun. You know, and
but Gordy is the one that pulls the gun.
In the book, he's the one that stands up and says all that stuff to Ace, and then the gun goes off and it's Chris, right?
I think this we talked about it with Shosh. Oh, sorry, Mike.
No, I was just saying that like in the movie, I just think like they were like, oh well, they just wanted more like the archetypes. Like Chris is this guy, you know, Teddy's this guy, and Gordy's going to be this guy. That's just kind of like the softy almost, you know.
But I don't think it breaks the narrative though. Like the themes, I don't think are ever broken because of it though. Like you still get the same sort of arc that Chris has, even if he doesn't pull the gun.
Teddy
and Teddy and Vern are pretty much, I feel like, dead on with the book. But I agree with you that the changes with Gordy are very large and different. Like the whole brother thing it changes his dynamic, but it doesn't change the themes though from the book though. For me, like I still feel like he has the same arc. You know, he still reaches the same sort of conclusions that Gordy in the book does. I just think it's different. I just feel like maybe it's a more comforting notion that his brother, I think there's actually more at stake for him and at the family because his brother was the only one that really accepted him. Whereas in the book, it's not
he had a good relationship, but it wasn't as close as it is in the movie.
In the book, he definitely has a harder time at home.
We talked about this with Shawshank in terms of when you're adapting a book into a movie, I think that the tendency, like you said, Mac, is to romanticize. But I don't think that this relationship made it, like, put a ding on the movie. You know what I mean? I don't think that I wasn't affected by that one way or the other. Like, I didn't mind if they had gone with the book narrative where he has a good relationship with his brother, but he's not really close. But I also didn't mind the movie version where he is close with his brother. I didn't feel like you said, Mike, I don't think that affected the narrative or where they were going to go throughout the story.
And I understand where you guys are coming from, but for me, like, I think it's different if like the brother was around and the parents have always been ignoring him, as opposed to it was only after his death that things took a shift and changed. Do you know what I mean?
Well, kind of, because if you look at the flashback with him, even like the father is not paying attention to the stories, and the brother is the only one that goes like, "Hey, he really wrote a good story." And even then, like the dad's just like,
"Yeah, they're still fawning over Denny in the movie too." I feel
so like the relationship with the parents, I don't think has changed. The only thing I would say is different, and where I would agree with you, is that Gordy in the movie has a much more comfortable like homestead because his brother actually did support him. Whereas in the book, he doesn't even have that. Like he just is. That's how. I mean, he has nobody other than Chris really at that point, which gives Chris a little bit more of an agency and an emphasis. Having said that, I still don't think it changes it too much. I actually think it gives it a little bit more tragedy because he not only does he feel guilty the fact that he's this like invisible son, but then the only person that did make him visible in the household is gone. So it adds like another layer that might not have been there. And also I could see why Reiner and God, who wrote the screenplay for it?
It's a couple of no names.
To
be I didn't recognize them.
So Reynold Gideon and Bruce A. Evans. Like I could see why they changed it over to the like being like the Golden Boy Cusack, because you weren't going to be able to have the Chico thing in here. There was like Reiner already was tortured over the fact of including the Lardass thing because he thought that was going to be too jarring.
I think it works perfectly.
But I do too. Like, but there's no way that they would have been able to do. It just would have changed the dynamic of the movie if you made it like.
Cecily does not work in the movie.
Yeah,
it would not work.
Absolutely, it doesn't work in the book.
Yeah, that's right. Sure. Good point. Can I run down some real quick minor changes that I noticed in the movie?
Sure.
First of all, we learned that Chris is dead right away in the movie. You see him.
That is a big change.
That's tough.
Which honestly, I didn't remember that until recently when I.
Either did I.
Yeah.
Either did I. The guy does not try to rip off Gordy at the store. He does not put his finger on the scale in the movie.
Right, that was another
that's
thing.
That's a big thing they took out. But I think that scene was more about Gordy looking back and having a flashback. They used that sequence to do that. The guy still talks about Denny, which triggers it, but I understand if you take that out, that's fine. That's a movie thing. It's an adaptation decision. The big thing, though, is the outcome for everybody.
Yeah.
And I don't know why he kind of softened that ending.
You didn't have to, because like you could have done the whole American Graffiti thing and just gone nuts.
And it's a rated R movie, first of all. So you're appealing to adults at this point, and it's like, why not just go for it? Because I think they're really trying to heighten the death of Chris.
Exactly.
And I mean, that does make sense from an adaptation standpoint.
Because
that's what you're really going for.
Because in that sense, these guys did nothing and didn't try to leave Castle Rock.
Yeah.
And they still are just kind of lingering, whereas Chris tried to live. And it's a change that I think still is impacting. It still has the same impact,
because they decided to start off with the news that he's dead. It just makes that more impactful. Yeah, I agree.
I think also from a film, I'm talking myself into it, is that's pretty rough. It's different when you're reading a story as opposed to watching it unfold. You know, so I think that would have been really rough for him to just lay out. And then Teddy walked off.
Yeah.
He'd be responsible for the death of 3 people. Oh, then Vernon walked off. He's going to die in a house fire.
You know what that
now
is?
Here's Chris. Guess what happened to Chris? It's pretty rough.
That's American Graffiti.
I get it.
That's literally American Graffiti. When like the ending you hear about all these people you love are all dead. It's like, oh great.
Maybe they'll do more Stand By Me and they'll have like and they'll show exactly what happened, just like more American Graffiti. Those are really. But again, though, I think that the start to finish, it's pretty damn faithful.
This is
to the story, to the novella.
One of my favorite films of all time.
Wow.
My top 10.
Wow. Top 10
for me. I think this movie is timeless. I think it takes all the themes from the book and just throws them up on there without having to be so overstated about it. I think that some of the changes that he does make are great. I like that there's no real fucking storm at the end. The wind does pick up and it gets a little darker when they're around the Brower body. And there is this like kind of weird tinge of overcast that makes it seem like it's a little bit more like darker and creepy. But there's no hail. There's no lightning. I mean, there's literally like the sequence when they're walking toward the body, there's like lightning literally striking right next to them. Like that gets a little over the top. But with this, it's so natural. It's just that's what I love about this movie. It's like it's precious, but at the same time, it's incredibly natural and realistic. And oh my god, the scenery in this movie is just gorgeous. I mean, those
the long shots, especially
the long shots when you see them. Like there's that one shot where I believe it's playing the Chordettes and the Lollipop, and you just see them through the trees and they're walking. And then the other one where they play the dum 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 dum, and you can see the glitter, the glistening of the river that's right next to him. Oh my god, it's like so Rockwellian, Norman Rockwellian, but it's so real at the same time. And God, I love it. I love it. I watched it twice in less than 12 hours, like in preparation for this podcast. And I never get tired of this movie. And again, it speaks to the fact that it's only like 82 or 80, 83 or 84 minutes or whatever.
The credits like 80 minutes long.
It's like nothing.
Crazy.
And it's just, but it tells a story. It's very like effective. The acting is so fucking vivid and real. River Phoenix is just in a lot of the interviews that we're going to be having. Spoiler alert: we were going to be talking about Jerry O'Connell, who played Vern, and we're also talking to Will Wheaton, who played Gordon LeChance. Hopefully, because we had to reschedule because of some digital interference that we had. But I mean, for Jerry like really talked about how like River's death like really impacted him and the cast, and I think it's impossible to watch this movie without thinking that. And like when he vanishes at the end, it is so affecting, and like there's something. You watch this performance from him and it's so mature, and it speaks at a level of performance that it's so adult. And like, I mean, that whole like confession when he starts crying, he's like, "Oh, I guess that makes me a pussy, huh?" Like,
well, the milk money sequence is even better in the movie.
God,
like,
it's much better. Yeah, like I don't know, it's just like everyone really nailed the mannerisms and the performances of these characters. Like in the Shawshank episode, you guys are talking about how it's so hard to talk about that story without talking the movie, and I agree with this. Like, and the same thing with Stand By Me and The Body. Like, I cannot separate these two like at all. Like I really can't. I tried, and it just
it's
strange.
Can't for me. Maybe because I've seen Stand By Me a bunch of times, but I'm able to separate The Body and Stand By Me more than I am Shawshank, because I think it's the opposite for me, Mike. I've seen Shawshank so many times. Yeah. And I saw it so many times before I ever read the novella.
Oh, I couldn't separate Shawshank either.
It was impossible to
That's impossible too. Like, impossible. I mean, the fact that I saw Red as Morgan Freeman the entire time. So, but it's the same
even
thing
when you're
with
reading it as knowing it's Red.
It's like a white.
It's crazy.
But it's the same thing with like Teddy. Like I cannot see Corey Feldman. I can't see. It's even like when we were reading like The Fucking Long Walk, and like McVree's reminding me of Chris Chambers. I saw River Phoenix the whole time. It's just really hard. I mean, I love this movie to death. Like,
I've got some random notes that I can run down that kind of don't really fit in anywhere. Casey Simasco, who plays Vern's older brother.
Yeah.
He later appears in Storm of the Century. The actor does.
Yeah.
Oh, you're right.
A couple for you horror hounds out there. Chris's brother Eyeball is from Nightmare on Elm Street 3, The Dream Warriors. He's the puppet, the puppet guy, the sleepwalker. Of course, Gordy's father, Marshall Bell from Nightmare on Elm Street 2. Hit the showers, Freddy's Revenge.
The coach.
Should have been you, Gord.
And then Corey Feldman, of course, was the original Tommy Jarvis in Friday the 13th Part 4.
Yeah.
So a couple of horror hounds out there.
It should be noted that Rob Reiner, following this, became quite the king aficionado. He created Castle Rock Entertainment.
Yeah. Thank you, Seinfeld.
Yeah, and honestly, there's a Seinfeld link to this, because I believe there's some topics that in the earlier episodes that are very similar to what they talk about in Stand By Me.
Really?
Yeah. It's in one of the trivia sections I was looking at.
Oh, okay. I don't remember that.
But I mean, I think the influence of this movie is obvious. I mean, you wouldn't have Stranger Things without the kids from Stranger Things are very just almost exactly the way they talk and act in this.
Oh yeah,
it's Goonies in
it's
this.
set up. Yeah, it's set up that the childhood adventure story in a huge way. I mean, you definitely wouldn't have movies like The Sandlot, which literally mirror the same kind of ending.
Totally.
With like the foreshadowing where everybody went to, and down to the dog, like the dog being like a not what everybody's made it up to be in their heads. You know, it's just like this little dog.
I think we're gonna have to talk about The Sandlot on this podcast, because if you think about it, that whole thing is a very king.
I'll let you know when I'm not available.
The sports fan over here sitting at the sports movie.
I know.
I'll go watch more. I'll go watch Rookie of the Year. But I do have one though. I did where I said I'm always impressed at people who can climb fences. I cannot climb chain link fences. No. It's unbelievable.
I would be so screwed. I'd be actually nothing would happen because Chopper's nothing.
I think it's tough if you have big feet. Good luck.
Hey, that's my problem. Big feet. I also have some sad news here. I did some research after the movie, and I discovered that I am now as old as Richard Dreyfuss is when he filmed Stand By Me.
Are you kidding me?
So I feel like I was like, oh Jesus
Christ!
Boy. And he was 37 going to 38. I'm 37 going to 38. So
wow.
So that's what I'm talking about. When you first read these as kids, you look at it in a totally different perspective. You feel yourself as Gordy, as Teddy, as Vern, as Chris. But now when I'm older, now I'm just totally looking back in a sense of nostalgia, because now I'm remembering 25 years ago when I read the story, and now I'm thinking about it from the perspective of the older Gordy. It's I love rereading these books. It's just I don't know. There's something really rewarding about going back and taking the leap again, taking a chance, as one might say. And
Gordy LaChance.
Gordy LaChance.
Allison, what do you think? No, we're just joking around here. Allison actually had to leave earlier, but she did leave us with her final thoughts for the book, which we're going to get to in a minute, I think.
We're going to get to it right now. Allison.
It's good. It's good. It's a good movie. I'm gonna go ahead and give this 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses.
And
I love this movie.
And when we're thinking about these bright red Pennywise clown noses, we have to imagine Rob Reiner wearing all of them.
Yes, we do.
At the
all
same
over
time?
his
At the
face.
same time.
Oh God! He just keeps shoving one on top of the other.
Like All in the Family, Rob Reiner.
I like
just
it
in
already.
the background. You know, "Oh, I'm supposed to be wearing these noses.
It sounds.
Do you think that sounds a little like him?
No.
No.
But I do think that Stand By Me is a worthy holder of the #1 slot on our adaptations ranking. I think it's just a really wonderful film.
That's the Consequence of Sound adaptations ranking,
yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. Yeah, I don't think anyone here is going to dispute the fact when I say this is a 5 for me.
What if you were like four top 5 movies of all time?
Yeah, no, this is a rare case in which not only do I think the movie is better than the book, but I think that they're symbiotic in a way that Reiner took the source material, which is already phenomenal, and made it even better by kind of chiseling out some of the fat that I just didn't think needed to be there. I think kind of twisting some things in ways that made it a little more economical. I think that the what you get from each of the 4 boys is just enough. Is just enough. I mean, I think you could get. I think the book itself obviously adds more depth to everything from Gordy's meditations to the writer's own meditations to where Chris is at, and I mean, there's obviously some more perspective. But God, the movie is just so sharp and efficient, and there's just not really any sagging to it. It's just the minute it starts, you're hooked emotionally, especially because of Jack Nietzsche's score, which takes the Benny King song and kind of reconfigures it to be this orchestral thing. Which, by the way, there's only like a few flourishes of this. There's not a huge like instrumental score, and they reuse a lot of portions. So really, I've listened to the same 5 minutes.
It's a Stand By Me orchestration.
There's one on YouTube, but it's like an hour of just them repeating it. And I swear to God, for the last 20 pages of reading this book, I just was like, I just was like seeing the movie so much. I was like, fuck it. And I just put on the orchestral stuff. So it's just this loop of all the things over and over again. And I think by the time I was like 45 minutes, I was like, all right, that's enough. I can't handle this anymore. But it's honestly, it's one of the rare films that like literally the second it starts, I just already feel like I need to start bawling. Like I'm just gonna fucking lose it. And it's just there's such an emotion that's tied to it. And maybe it's because I remember that era so well. There's something about like, even at the very end, when the kids are like waiting around for the dad, and he's using that old computer, and there's like even just the way that his whole office is made up. Maybe it's just for me because at the time, the 80s, of that age, that's my dad was that age, and like all of my friends' dads were that age, and so I remember those offices that my parents would work in, and even just the ending of there, just waiting around for the parents to be done with work. It's just there's something about that even ties to me, that hits me in such a way that I recall that era of. And I don't know, it just there's such innocence to it, and there's such a timelessness to it, and I'll just never, to quote Titanic, I'll never let go. This is a film that means more than the world to me, and like probably is one of the reasons why I'm obsessed with Stephen King, and that's probably one of the reasons why I like push for it to be #1 in our list, also for the Consequence of Sound thing, because I just God, it captures everything I love about Stephen King, and it captures everything I love about the coming of age story. I guess.
I'll tell you what, I could diagram. If anybody out there really wants to impress Mike and make a movie, here are the 3 touchstones. you can do or you can do or here. You have a group of childhood friends.
Yeah.
1. 2, set it in the early 80s.
Yep.
Or set it during either like from like the beginning of time to now, but have a synth score.
Yeah.
And Mike, it'll be like,
I'm in.
I'm gonna give you Mike will at least give you a chance.
Yeah.
He'll at least give that.
I'll give you a
movie
Gordy
chance.
chance.
Yeah. Oh, well, so Mike, How many? You're gonna give 5 noses?
I'm going
right?
5 noses. It's going all over Rob Reiner's face again, just like the book.
All right.
And he's got 10 noses on his face now because of this episode.
Wow, that's a lot of noses for Robbie.
Yeah.
Mackie.
I'm giving it 4 bright red Pennywise clown noses. I really like the movie a lot. I think that it is a good adaptation. I think you guys are right in terms of it. It does hit the same themes. I mean, if it takes a different route to get there, I think it still drives home a lot of the themes that King was going for. And I mean, King himself said it was the best adaptation of his work at the time.
You probably said the same thing about the Mist.
Yeah, he said that about the Mist.
The TV series,
the television series.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but but I will say it's strange because I know I gave the book 3.5, but that's in relationship to all of the other books. I do like the book more than the movie, though. For the same reasons that Mike was loving the movie, I feel like are the things that I didn't really love about it was that I like that it's a little dirtier, it's a little more depressing, it's a little bit more, gritty and real in the book, especially the outcomes of the kids. And I know why it was changed for the film, and I think it works better as a movie to do it that way. You've got to change things to make things a better movie. Obviously, if it was just word for word the book, it wouldn't make for a good movie. It would be like 3 hours long, and it just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
But for me, I did like the story more.
I'm gonna give you a chance. I never would do this in any other episode, but are you gonna? So you're saying you like the novella more, but you're gonna give the movie 4 and the novella 3.5.
Yeah.
I don't understand.
What do you mean?
Because you're giving the movie more noses. We're going to the logistics here.
I'm not comparing because I'm not you can't compare the book rating to the movie rating because I'm comparing the book to all the other Stephen King books, not all books in general.
I can see it then.
Okay, all right. I was saying,
you know what I'm saying?
Okay,
as a film adaptation against the other film Stephen King film adaptations. I'm not saying against all movies or against all. The ratings will probably change.
Okay,
I'm doing King books and King movie.
I see what you're saying. I'm sorry. Yeah.
So yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
I do all my scales just in terms of like the grand scheme of things, like the grand scheme of all novellas and books, and then for me, for the movies, it is of all the King movies that we've had to sit through. God help us all. It's number 4 on my list. I still feel like my top.
What is your list then?
My holy trinity is. It alternates. It's like Shawshank, Carrie, and The Shining. I mean, those are great movies.
Like Kubrick's The Shining.
Oh yeah, Kubrick's The Shining.
Yeah.
I know that's not a faithful adaptation, but it's technically an adaptation.
I thought you were going to say 1997 miniseries.
Oh yeah, the Mick Garris adaptation. all 7.5 hours or 9 hours. I give the movie 4 Bright Red Pennywise Clown Noses. It's really. I still have it a little bit below the novella. That's funny because we put out a poll on Twitter yesterday about who likes what more, and everybody. I think. Well, first of all, I think people were just more familiar with the movie to begin with.
It's an iconic film.
Yeah, it's an iconic film. But most people do seem to like the movie. More, and I do love both, but just for everything we touched upon when we had that huge section on the word processor of the guy, like for me, it's just the prose, not just in terms of just King writing, but just in terms of all the stories I've read. So much of this sticks with me, and so much of it had an impact on me at a younger age, as I mentioned earlier. That's why for me the book is a little ahead of the movie. But to go back to the movie and what I love about the movie so much is. Like you touched upon, Mike, the casting of those kids is so important.
Yeah.
And if any of those kids sucked, the movie gets knocked down so much. And I was watching and thinking, Corey Feldman really was like the king of child actors in that period. Obviously, I think River Phoenix was probably ultimately a stronger child actor. But in terms of the movies that became so legendary from that era, where you got Goonies, The Lost Boys. And then to like a lesser extent, in terms of pop culture, like License to Drive came out with the Coreys in it, and then you've got Friday the 13th Part 4, final chapter. Oh God, Dream a Little Dream. That's when we start getting into the negative area. And then this launched Jerry O'Connell, became big. Will Wheaton became a star after this.
Will Wheaton is so good in this. I mean,
yeah, he's great in it too. Like again, and I think that's why I actually like that he becomes less of the observer and more of like the lead participant in the movie.
Yeah.
Because Will Wheaton's so good, 1.
Yeah.
And 2, it just almost works from a standpoint of the person narrating it, it makes sense for him to have these big moments too.
Yeah.
I actually I didn't mind that change. I didn't necessarily like it more, but I was like, I understood in terms of where the movie was going that it would lead to Gordy with that gun at the very end and making a stand. Rob Reiner is incredible. This again goes to, it's so important for somebody to not only acknowledge what the material is and could be, but it's important that somebody loves Stephen King that goes into these movies. We talked about ad nauseum with The Dark Tower. I know that director claims to have learned English for The Dark Tower, but you didn't feel that love of King and realizing the aesthetic and what you need to do with it. And Rob Reiner absolutely does, not only with this, but of course with Misery. Again, he named his production company Castle Rock, for God's sake. And then he really wanted to do Shawshank and wasn't able to do that. So,
but like the most successful Stephen King adaptations for me are the ones that capture the most important facet of his books, is that the interpersonal relationships.
Yes.
Like that is so important. And like the reunion, the idea of the reunion. That's why I'm excited for It Part 2, because like clearly Muschietti understood the interpersonal relationships with the kids and stuff. So when he does the reunion, which is always the strongest suit for King's books, it's great in It. It's great. I mean, honestly, Dreamcatcher sucks, but like that reunion element is great about it. Also, it's like when the characters come together.
Is the very beginning.
Yeah, and like, but Darabont's great at that also. So like, if you think about it, like you got Reiner and Darabont is like the two leading contenders for like the best adaptations for Stephen King, and it's because I honestly feel he really understands how to capture that bond, whether it's like firsthand or whether it's long term. You know, like look at The Mist, like. The way the characters interact and work together is the best part of that movie.
It's the ensemble work in all those movies. Yeah,
and same thing with Shawshank. Like Shawshank, like by the end of that movie, like you even know like the lesser known characters in that, just because they're so developed and they have that sort of that banter and that sort of interaction that makes it feel like this is the actual world and not just some stage production. And that's what I love about Stand By Me. Like, you know, it really does feel like they've been friends for forever, and like their reactions aren't scripted. Like there's a lot of scenes where you know, you could say like yeah obviously this was like kind of written and stuff, but not really. Even like I just think even like when they're in the treehouse in the very beginning, this is like the first scene that you really see with all of them, and
it's natural.
It's so natural.
Yeah.
I mean, even like when they're like making fun of Vern is like can't get his piece in, and he's just like you know, screw you guys or whatever. And it's just so like, oh my god, it feels so real. And then like Gordy's breakdown of like, he's like, no, they're not actually gonna care because they're gonna think that you're over it. And it's just like, it's so good. I love it. It's just like, I don't know. I feel like Jimmy Fallon right now when I'm talking about this movie.
It's great.
Like, I just can't.
But it is.
I just can't think about anything.
It's easy to get lost in it. It's not hyperbole because you mean it. That's the difference between us and my boy over there on the Tonight Show. God help us all. Sorry, Jimmy Fallon. So that comes out to an average of 4.25 Briar Red Penny Clown Noses. That might be one of our highest episode rankings, I think, for a movie, and justifiably so. It's terrific. Gentlemen, Allison's left already. We say goodbye, Allison, but I will say this has been a hell of an episode.
Been a hell of an episode. We've fallen apart over here.
Mike Rothman dying before our very eyes, but he braved it through.
You might say I need a breathing method.
Hey, Mike, good point. We'll get to that in a second too. But everybody, thanks so much again for continuing to listen to the Losers Club each and every week. Please be sure to spread word about the podcast if you haven't already. Be sure to leave us a review on iTunes, Facebook, wherever you're listening to us. This is not just for vain reasons. This really will help us with the podcast going forward. The more words, hopefully positive, but be honest out there about the podcast. It really, really does help us out a lot. As Mike mentioned, our next book will be the fourth and final novella from different seasons, The Breathing Method, which is short as hell, so we'll need to figure out something to do to make that a nice, healthy-sized episode. But I've got some good ideas. Yeah, I've got some good ideas. Also, story-wise, we'll talk about that. But we're getting off the topic here. So you'll definitely hear from us next week again with more King news, tweets, and whatnot. But until then,
long days and pleasant nights.
I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. I got some hot friends. God, I got some hot friends. But you know you want somebody to treat you good.
Consequence Podcast Network.